Witches, wizards, and muggles. Such an honour it is to welcome you to Rennervate, a Harry Potter TCG revival podcast with your host, Doug, Mona, and Emilio.
Thanks a lot, Dobby. We appreciate you. Welcome to Rennervate, a Harry Potter TCG podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mona, and I am here with Doug and Emilio.
How's it going, everyone? Hey, Emilio.
Yo, wow, that was such an interesting way to hear Mona talk.
Thank you.
We're back
Thanks,
at
guys.
it again. Oh my gosh. And this time we're talking about the base set, the first set we were ever introduced to. But before we get into that, how's everyone doing tonight? I feel like there's a couple of things we have to do before we get started here. But yeah, how's everyone doing? Everything going well in your worlds?
All going well. I'm a little tired, but all going well other than that.
That's good to hear. How about you, Emilio?
Yeah, I'm tired just with job applications and trying to finish my thesis, but overall I'm here standing.
You're just killing it.
Relatable. I hear that.
It's killing me, but yes.
Well, that's one thing I feel like we forgot to mention on our previous episode is our Hogwarts houses. I feel like it's an important detail that our listeners should be aware of. And I feel like, does anyone want to tell our listeners which house they identify with first?
Well, for those of you that are watching, you've always seen the Hufflepuff in like huge blanket thing in the background. So for me, it's definitely Hufflepuff. I like the only house that doesn't have gold, silver, or copper because they're above or just over the competition. So I like that attitude. And also the badger being related to the honey badger, it doesn't give a shit, but it will destroy you. I just love all those things together and kind of describes me a little bit.
Love it.
Nice.
How about you, Mona?
So I took that test that many people do, and I am a Gryffindor, which I am proud of. No problems there. And then there was a second test that I took that I didn't realize the results would be broken down by percentage depending on the house.
Yes.
And so it was like I was neck and neck with Gryffindor and Ravenclaw, and then it was Slytherin, then Hufflepuff. So either way, Gryffindor is kind of at the top there, and I don't mind that.
That's funny. I've
Or
taken
Gryffindor.
Yeah, Gryffindor. Yeah, there you go.
That's exactly how I feel I relate as well. I've taken a couple of the online tests, and I've one time got Gryffindor, the other time got Ravenclaw. And yeah, the one that had the percentages broken down, it was basically like 50-50 with Ravenclaw, Gryffindor. And I'm like, man, I love both of those houses, so I can't be mad. But I think I'll, if I was getting a sorting hat placed on my head right now, I'd probably ask it to put me in Ravenclaw. So that's where I'll represent that.
So it's a balance. It's a balanced podcast here, as you can see. And just to add to the mix, my first quiz that I ever took was Slytherin.
Oh,
but
okay.
Then, that was like before the update of the site, and then I took it again like a year ago, and it was Hufflepuff. I haven't taken the percentage one though, so I don't know. I should see how that turns out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. We're here tonight talking about the base set of cards, which there's 116 of them, and this is going to be a deep dive. We're going card by card, talking about what the details are on this card, how they're played in the game, and everything. So who wants to start this one off? I feel like it's going to be a long one, but it'll be very informative, and hopefully our listeners can learn about the first cards that were even available to us.
I can start because it's a very simple first card.
For sure.
The first card is Dean Thomas, Gryffindor wizard. And you can start with him because he's a wizard. And basically, he just draws you 3 cards once per game. So, yeah, that's it. Mediocre effect at the best for the number 1 spot. So that's really it. I don't know if you all have like some sort of use for this card. I don't.
No, I don't really use it in any of my decks currently, and that's another problem with it. It's one of the holographic cards, so it's kind of hard to read. I wish there
Right.
was like a non-holo version of this card, and I think some people in the revival group have created proxy versions of it, so you can just print this card without it having to be so reflective. But yeah, again, in a game where you're trying to deck out your opponent, when you're drawing 3 cards, it's good to like build up your hand, but it also feels like you're damaging yourself. So again, I don't really utilize this card too much myself. How about you, Mona?
Yeah, as a starting character, I have never used that card or ever thought to. I
Right.
think in one of my like the very first character deck that I built, I experimented with Dean Thomas, but anytime he was out, I just felt like, if I use it to draw 3 cards, like you were saying, I'm kind of depleting my deck. So it was just one of those that just never really got played personally, and I would never think to use him as a starting character
Yeah.
personally. So
That makes perfect sense. Well, I guess that leads us to our next card, which is Draco Malfoy. And this one's unique. And I feel like there's only 2 cards that we're going to come across in this base set that are like this, where Draco Malfoy is both number 2 and number 3. And I'm like, why? Well, first, before we even get into that, what it reads on the card is he's a Slytherin unique wizard character. And during your turn, you may use an action and discard a card from your hand to look at your opponent's hand. You may then choose 1 card in his or her hand and discard it. So yeah, perfectly flavorful for a character like Draco Malfoy. He's such a little prick. He's gonna
right.
try to ruin your day.
Yeah.
But I guess the reason that they have it both as number 2 and number 3, and maybe you guys could correct me if I'm wrong here, is because the number 2 one is exclusively the holographic version, and then the number 3 version is like the non-holographic one. It's just foil, and I feel like this foil is unique from other foils because it doesn't have like the lightning bolt and star pattern in the background. It's just like just like a shiny reflective behind the character. And then there's also an alternate artwork version of Draco Malfoy as well. So there's quite a couple different Malfoys to collect in the base set.
Yeah, they came in different. I think the starter decks, if I'm not mistaken.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So Draco, along with Hermione, which we'll get to in a bit, those alternate arts that you see came in the starter sets as the starting characters. And so I get, in the starter decks, you'll find cards that are a little bit different than the ones that you'll find in booster packs and booster boxes. So maybe that was like their first way of experimenting with what different really meant.
Yes.
Something like the Chamber of Secrets, like what we were talking about, the theme deck, right? You've got Percy Weasley, and that had the foil potions, I believe, which
Potions
again,
Project. Yeah, that's
Potions
so cool.
Project, yeah. Whereas, like, you would find that as an uncommon regular card. It's not foil at all. So maybe that was like their way of saying, hey, let's make these a little bit different. They're more sought after, they're more unique, or something like that.
Totally.
That's what I would think.
I've run into a couple cards like that, and I don't even think these are in the base set, for instance, but like River Troll and Manticore, like there's like commons and uncommons that are foil, and it's like super cool when you just stumble across that.
Exactly, yeah.
So that kind of sums up Draco Malfoy, though, taking up both number 2 and number 3.
Yeah, this is a great card for me personally. I love the flavor, as you said. Not only he gets you in trouble, but he's always has access to resources. As everything that you have, he has all these connections. His father's in the Ministry of Magic, so it's just the perfect flavor for Draco Malfoy. And I normally use him with if I use them, I use them with Miss Norris, as you can see your opponent's hand, right? But we'll talk more about Miss Norris in a bit. Definitely a character you would use if you don't want to have friends, as you will be discarding your opponent's cards, and this great synergies with this card that will go in later.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've definitely used Draco in my decks as well. Not a whole lot, but I have used him in my decks, never as a starting character, but just as something to help out.
Definitely.
Okay, so number 4 then is where we're at.
Yes.
Okay, so number 4 is going to be an adventure. It's called Dragon's Escape. So the effect is before each of your turns, your opponent takes 1 damage. To solve, your opponent chooses 3 of his or her lessons in play and discards them. And your opponent's reward is your opponent draws 3 cards or does 3 damage to you. and I am going to say the art is amazing.
Oh yes, this is one of my
Yeah.
favorite foils to look at and just like bask in the glory of this artwork. It is just beautiful, and it's also pretty handy adventure. I know adventures can be polarizing because some people just think it's may slow down the game, for instance. But for me, I really like the adventure aspect of the Harry Potter trading card game. The fact that you can solve it, even though it's like something you wouldn't necessarily want to do, for in this instance having to discard 3 lessons from play, like that's brutal as you're
Yeah.
trying to build up your lesson count. But yeah, and then you get a reward for what you're trying to do. This is a great card if you ask me.
Mhm. Well, I personally hate this card. It's
Yeah.
so
That's
bad,
good that's
and
good to have different opinions.
diversity.
Yeah.
The Slitherhuff here. It's
Yeah.
like
Uh,
really like your opponent will never. They will not solve this. They're just taking 1 damage. They're taking you're using your adventure slot. You can only have 1 adventure to play at a
oh
time.
sure, I
So
never
like
looked at it in that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
it takes your space. And the reward, is great for them. They can damage you or draw cards depending on what they need. It's truly, in my opinion, a horrible card. Beautiful art though. That is beautiful. Very
Yeah,
good art.
I think the adding 1 damage though is just like that adds up over time, and but it's like that. There's another card, and I don't know if it's this set or another, but it's like the slow bleeding poison or something, where it just like just over time, every single turn it'll do 1 damage to your opponent. So just I think I like that like slow approach, because it's like you just like it tacks on if you have creatures and everything, and too it's just like just that additional damage to be like, got you still.
Yeah, definitely. If you have creatures, I would say maybe that adventure was sort of geared towards that because you have a few creatures in play. So let's say, you're doing like something like 5 or 6 damage each turn with your creatures, and then you have 1 extra. And then, like you said, Doug, like, your opponent is trying to build up their lesson so they can play whatever cards, and then here you go, taking them away. But I'm kind of between the both of you. Like, I don't hate it and I don't love it. Like,
Right.
it definitely isn't my go-to adventure. I do like adventures that attack opponents' lessons, or
Yes.
stops them in some kind of way, because that's sort of the whole point of the adventure. But because this isn't so detrimental, it's not motivating for your opponent to solve it. It's
Mhm.
like, man, it's 1 damage, whatever. Like, especially if I'm the one on the receiving end of this adventure, I'm not going to solve that. I'm going to
Yeah,
say,
exactly.
okay, well, I'll just take the 1 damage, because what's that going to add up to? Yes, eventually it's going to be a problem, but my hope is that I'm going to do more damage each turn to
Right.
you, that I'm still going to win. You know what I mean? So
And put those lessons to use, like with spell cards to damage that person. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to give up 3 just over the prospect of losing 1 damage each turn. I see both points. It makes sense. But yeah, gotta love that artwork. Good God. Beautiful foil.
yes,
Yeah, and
definitely.
in terms of gameplay for our listeners, what matters is also what you want to play, right? Like, so you can build 2 decks that are a little slower, and the cards like this sort of speed them up a little bit, but you don't want them to be too fast. I'm just talking in general, right? Like, I wouldn't use this card, but remember that if you have a flavor or an idea for a deck, of course you can use this card. You just have to, the context of when you use it.
Right. Absolutely.
For
All right.
sure.
Well, that brings us to card number 5 out of 116. I know. We gotta keep the pace going. Which one are we at, Emilio?
So it's the Elixir of Life. It's one of my favorite cards in the set.
Oh yeah.
Cost 10 potion lessons. Sadly, it's a spell. Very sad. I wish it was an item. It's literally an item, but it's not an item card. It's a spell card. Healing, and you discard 2 of your potion lessons, and you can heal 16 non-healing cards, which go from your discard into your deck. So really powerful healing spell. You have to have a solid strategy to use healing cards, though. While you're healing, your opponent can kill you. It's not the best strategy if you're playing like faster games. It might be better in slower games, but still pretty cool card. I've used it, and the art is amazing. A treasure chest speaks to my inner child and my current self, and a very glassy potion bottle sleeping on a beautiful pillow. So
Yeah.
great art.
That's a great, man, you really described it perfectly.
Yes.
Yeah, no, it is a really good card. I think using healing cards is, I don't love healing cards, especially in the that are potions, because they almost always require that you discard lessons.
Absolutely.
So you're giving up something in order to use it. And to me, I feel like you don't need to do that if there are other options. Like if you're going to have potions anyway, and let's say, for example, you start with Severus Snape, who provides you a potion, and it also allows you to take 7 cards from your discard pile and put them into your hand. Now, of course, 7 and 16 are very different, but at the end of the day, that is what your starting character does. And so whenever you have a card that's so expensive like that, and then you have to get rid of 2 to use it, it's hit or miss. I mean, it really is. It's either going to work out for you or your opponent's going to damage, and then the 16 cards that you put back in are going to go right back into your discard pile.
Right.
So it just does depend, but yeah.
In desperate situations, it's worth discarding the 2 potions. But like you said, I've seen it play out where you heal 16 and then the next turn someone does like 18 damage and you're just like, wait.
Exactly, yeah.
Had a net loss of 2. So it's a fantastic card. This artwork, agreed. This is one of my favorite cards in the set as well. But okay, that brings us to number 6, which is an adventure. Gringotts Cart Ride. God, another beauty. Look at that. Is that grip hook up front? That's awesome.
Sure.
Adventure effect. Before each of your opponent's turns, he or she chooses a card in his or her hand, if any, and discards it. To solve, your opponent skips a total of 5 actions. Brutal. Those actions don't need to be one right after the other. Your opponent's reward is your opponent may draw 5 cards. So yeah, this one is actually insane. Anything that requires skipping actions just is awful.
Yeah, it really does get to be painful for sure, especially 5, and you're just like, oh, and then if you do them one at a time, that means you only get 1 action, so your chances of playing an adventure or a character or something like that are just totally shot.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, but otherwise it's a pretty decent card.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't know, Mona can speak more to this, but I'm pretty sure that this was one of the arts that was reused in a lot of merchandise. Very iconic.
Yes, it definitely is. So actually, there is even like a figurine, sort of like I guess you'd call it, I don't even know, I don't want to call it like an action figure, right? But like it's actually like a physical item that
like a vinyl figurine.
Yeah, exactly. That looks just like this. And then of course there's like a puzzle that uses this same art. There's quite a few things, which of course I do go over in the YouTube channel, not to do like a plug, but you know what I mean? Like we'll definitely go over some of that. But the similarities that you'll see with this one in particular are in many other places. It's really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, and just in terms of like one of the things that I really like about the game, as I've spoken about and as I also have videos on, is just the flavor of the cards. And here you're basically going through all the hoops and all the turns of the Gringotts, right? So you're losing your shit all over the place, and then when you finally get to the end, you're rewarded with your treasure in your vault, right? So that's sort of the flavor behind this card. And I just love that they really, each card really has very unique flavor, and I can't say that even for Magic the Gathering, to be very honest. So
right. Really, I love that aspect of it. Well, and that brings us to our next character, Mona.
Yes, we've got Hannah Abbott, which is number 7. So we'll read her first. So Hannah Abbott is Hufflepuff, so that's right up there with Emilio. They actually took class together. Once per game, you may trade 2 cards in your hand for 2 non-healing cards in your discard pile. I totally dig Hannah Abbott. I really do. And I use her in a few of my decks. It depends. I mean, like, of course it can be costly, right? Because you're taking 2 actions to play her. But if you really have like a strategy in mind and the 2 exact cards that you need that are in your discard pile from damage done, or you want to reuse it or whatever the case might be, she's definitely a way to go. So I do like Hannah.
Definitely. Very useful character. And yeah, every now and then I'll have her in a deck. Yeah, it's like you said, if you have a plan or a strategy with that specific ability in mind, she's perfect for it.
Yeah. Great secondary character for sure. I don't know primary in my opinion, but
right.
For sure,
she married Neville, right? Yeah. She ended up with Neville at the end of the books. So she has to be good at finding stuff. since
Yeah.
Neville is always losing shit. That's my logic.
Yeah,
Love it.
there's that flavor coming out.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. All right, well, that brings us to card number 8. It's the titular Harry Potter. This one's yours, Emilio.
Yeah, Harry Potter. It's interesting that I'm actually getting the cards I use. So Harry Potter is, for those of you that don't know, he's a Gryffindor. And Harry Potter basically lets you use an action to draw 2 cards instead of 1. So, this kid is like pushing himself all through the series. So he's always in pain. And in the card game, that means you're damaging yourself, which means that you're drawing more cards. Really advantageous. You get more resources, but you're killing yourself literally in the game by using this effect. I love this strategy. I'm a black player in Magic the Gathering. That means that I like to lose resources to gain more resources and win before you kill me. So this is the kind of card I like to play.
Awesome. Yeah, I love this character. I've played it as a starter every now and then, but I also see it being very valuable as like a secondary helping character.
I like to look at this Harry Potter card. I don't use it. I think
Fair enough.
yeah, I think the art is great. Obviously I think that in theory it's great, but there are so many other I think better cards that sort of play to that advantage. So I couldn't say that I've used this Harry Potter character as a starting or even secondary, but he's totally adorable. So
Fair enough. All right, well, that brings us to Hermione Granger, which we had mentioned previously. She's another one of these 2 numbered card slots. She's number 9 and 10. But Hermione, another a witch of Gryffindor. It says if you already have 2 or more lessons in play, then whenever you use an action to play a lesson card, you may play 2 lesson cards instead of 1. Love it. Again, the flavor is perfect for her character. She's the Brainiac, the bookworm Brainiac, and for you to be able to play 2 lessons with 1 action is so advantageous to just build your lesson count. That's like, especially for me, that's a kind of player of this game, of the game I am. I love to just have cards that cost a lot of lessons and just like, it's a slow build of like, I'm using all my early turns, just building my lesson count to be able to play some high level cards. So a character like her to start as her is very advantageous.
Yeah, definitely. I would say, like you said, Doug, if you're trying to have a deck where if you have a deck where you have expensive cards, this is definitely the type of starting character you want. I've had one of my opponents start with Hermione Granger, and I can tell you they rack up those lessons quick. And I'm like, damn, I don't like that.
Exactly. As an opponent, it's concerning.
As an opponent, I'm like, man, this is not going to be good for Mona.
Yes. And that's another thing I want to point out. She's also a character that has an alternate artwork card. And gosh, both her and Draco's alternate artwork are my preferred. They are just really detailed and good. I love how they are portrayed.
And they're so different from each other.
Absolutely.
The way that they
Very
look.
much so. Yes.
The base set is more original of the actual description of Hermione in the books with her bushy, sort of messy hair.
Yes.
And then the alternate art is more like Miss America art. So it's really, really interesting. It's for those of you that play Magic the Gathering, this is sort of the green strategy with Hermione that you can ramp up your mana base, in this case, the lessons. And if you have cards that return lessons to your hand, then Hermione is indeed a great addition because then you don't lose as many actions net when you are putting back those lessons. So really cool card. And she has to study first before she can do this. So this is amazing. You have to have 2 lessons before she can do this. So it's not something that is inherently in her. And I love that flavor as well.
Definitely. And I think there's another Hermione card in a future set where it's like Hermione top student, and it's as if she's already has the studying done, and she doesn't require you having 2 lessons in play, and she could already do that ability. It's so good.
Oh yeah, it's unreal.
Full story arc.
That leads us to card number 11.
All right, card number 11 is Human Chess Game, another adventure. So the effect for this one is during each of your opponent's turns, he or she can play cards only if you played 1 or more cards during your previous turn. So to solve it, your opponent chooses and discards one of his or her characters in play, other than their starting character, of course, because that can't be discarded, or 8 cards from his or her hand. And the reward for your opponent would be to draw 3 cards. Yes.
That's brutal. If you don't have any characters in play, then it like forces your hand to get rid of 8 cards from your hand. That
Correct.
sucks.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's it's really unique, I guess, for people to have multiple characters. At least some of the opponents that I've played against, they don't usually have multiple characters.
Right.
Yeah, so to have that, you're like, okay, so you're basically just telling me to get rid of 8 cards. Yeah, so
Yeah, I haven't seen this one much in play. I honestly only think I have one copy of it because Emilio sent me a few missing pieces for my base set. So this was probably one of those.
nice. Well, if you
Yeah.
need another one, let me know because I'll hook you up.
Cool.
It's a really good card, like for control players, right? Like you're really limiting your opponent to do, as much as you do, or least, or follow the game and sacrifice 8 of their pieces this time in your hand to win the match of the wizard chest. So another amazing flavor win for the card as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely. All right, that takes us to
Cool.
card number 12.
That's supposed to be me, or
Emilio
that's you.
Soto?
cool. So yes, the invisibility cloak. One of my favorite arts in the set. This is definitely, I
For
think,
sure.
my favorite art in the set.
Yep.
13 powerhouse here, and if you ever get it out, you can only get 1 out because it's unique. And for all that waiting that you do of having 13 lessons, you get the amazing prize of you can avoid 1 damage, right? Yeah, prevent all damage of a spell card. It doesn't, no creatures, no items, just spells. So,
No.
this card sucks. I'm sorry, like it's horrible. But like, I could see maybe someone using it for flavorful decks if you have like a really interesting build. But definitely not great unless you're discarding it maybe with Arthur Weasley or something. But regardless of that, yeah, not a great card. A very huge miss, and I feel that they did it dirty by giving it this effect. For 13, I would say you can take spell damage, at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. 13 is really, really pricey, and there's a couple pricey cards that I just don't understand why. Maybe there's like a strategy that someone out there knows better than us, and I would love to absolutely learn that, but it doesn't make sense to like. It's almost like you're building up, and then that's your climax. It's like, well, hold on, like that doesn't make any sense,
We
Like
get to play more.
Yeah, it's like, hold on, wait.
Right up Emilio's alley.
Right. Well, and also the thing is, for me, like just the games that I played against, some of the decks that I played against, if I wanna prevent any damage from any spell, it's gonna be like Venomous Tentacular Juice or Dobby's Help. However,
Right.
those are not doing damage. So Dobby's Help isn't doing 10 damage, it's having you draw 10 cards, and Venomous Tentacular Juice is not doing the damage double. So it's like those are the main heavy hitters as far as spells, not all, but they're pretty heavy, and that doesn't prevent it. So like, hold on, you want me to use 13, pull this card out, have it unique, and then you could still beat me with just that combination? It's like, no, I don't personally. But I love the art, baby. The same with you,
Yeah, the
Emilio.
art
I'm
is
definitely
amazing.
for sure.
Yeah, this art is really cool in how they utilize the holographic ability of this card, because it just really does make Harry Potter just like disappear. It's so cool.
It's
I love
amazing.
it.
Yeah.
And lastly, maybe in future sets, as the revival group goes, maybe there's a card that lets you win the game if you have all 3 Deathly Hollows. So maybe
Ooh.
then, in a build like that will be an interesting.
Yo, that plug that you
Unbelievable,
just everything you just said right now was like the biggest mic drop I've ever
Yeah,
heard.
seriously, mind blowing. Every
Yeah, I'm
listener.
like, wait, what?
Such a great idea. That I would love something like that. All right. Well, that said, that brings us to our next character, which I think this is me, Nearly Headless Nick. He's a Gryffindor ghost, and he's unique. So since he's a ghost, he's not a witch or a wizard. You cannot play this as a starting character. But once per game, you may search your deck. When you do, you may take up to 2 item cards from your deck, show them to your opponent, and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. So yeah, super resourceful character, especially if you're looking for, if you have an item deck specifically that you're like, I really hope, like, it just increases your odds of getting them in your hand immediately. But again, costs 2 actions to get this character in play. It's you kind of have to have that strategy in mind, otherwise it might not be worth the card slot in your deck.
Yeah, true story. I mean, if you're playing Nearly Headless Nick and you have, let's say, for example, like a Bulgeye potion, you might want to go in for that because you can discard the Bulgeye after it's in play to do 13 damage to your opponent. So I would say
Yeah.
something along those lines. Obviously, like I'm just kind of picking stuff out, but other than that, like you said, I mean, yes, it's definitely resourceful, but you got to have an idea of what items they are. They can't just be some random items. Otherwise, playing 2 actions for Nearly Headless Nick without like a real strategy wouldn't really help you, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny, like Emilio pointed out, the elixir of life isn't even an item; it's a spell.
Yeah.
It's like that's exactly what the kind of
Yeah.
item I would want to take, something
Yeah.
healing or something. But
Exactly.
oh man,
Yeah,
Exactly.
I use Nick in the Draco Malfoy build sometimes. It
Mhm.
really depends on what on deck you're facing. If you're facing a deck that decks you out quick, then All Advantage is a better choice because you'll just take the card. It's likely that the card will be discarded, the key card, and you just take it from the discard pile. But if you're playing against a slower deck, like Nearly Headless Nick is a good tutor or a card that searches for your combo engine from the deck to your hand. So
right?
that's it. And he's a ghost, so he travels to places and tells you where items are. So pretty cool flavor.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Very
he's
good.
a cool ghost for sure.
Cool. And now we're on to the next one.
All right. So that's gonna
Okay.
be. Is that me?
I think
Yes.
I think so,
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. So number 14 is Obliviate. It is a spell, and it costs 12 charm lessons. So what Obliviate does is it says your opponent discards his or her hand.
Boom.
Yeah, so Obliviate,
Brutal.
yeah, very, very brutal. It is pretty cool because let's say, for example, you have this is a pretty common combination to use, which is charms and potions deck, a charms and potion deck. So if you do have charms, you're most likely going to use the wand shop location, which allows
Yes.
you to, so that basically says one of your charms lessons is going to count as 2. So essentially you only need 6 lessons, 6 of your charm lessons to play this. And so for something like that, I would personally probably use like a Dobby's Help and then pull that one, so that if I don't have like a Venomous Tentacular or something like that, then all of those cards that you just drew, you would just have to discard them.
Right. Yeah, this card has been played against me on many occasions, and it's
Yeah.
always this hard pill to swallow because it's like, no. And I just, yeah, as far as the flavor, it's perfect. You literally lose memory of all the cards that were in your hand because they're now in the discard pile. It just makes me think of Gilderoy Lockhart. Was this spell mentioned in like the first book? Because I feel like if this being a part of the base set makes me think like maybe Obliviate was mentioned in like passing.
Not that I remember, but
Me neither. Yeah, no, obviously it's probably been a while since any of us have brushed up on the reading, but either way, yeah, I do love this spell.
For sure. Very good.
yeah, I definitely used it. I used it with Alba's deck in the past and Bravado if I want to a quick discard.
Ooh,
But
yeah.
in the future, if there's cards that bounce more cards from your opponent's field to their hand, you can then also just wipe them out with this spell. So pretty cool card.
Definitely.
And now we move to Phileas.
Yes.
So the first professor that we're going to review, most professors will always give you a lesson. Flitwick is from Ravenclaw. He gives you a charms lesson power. So not a lesson, right? It doesn't count as a lesson, but you have one more of charms power. And that's really powerful because that means you don't have to put charm lessons in your deck. You just need Flitwick as your starting character.
Yes.
And then in addition to being a smartass with charms, he can also trade 2 cards from your hand to get one charm card, one card that has a charm power to your hand. So if your opponent discarded one of your key cards, you can just use Flitwick to Accio, however you say it, your discarded card to your hand and use it. So good for combo engine. Just a really competitive card overall, especially at the start of the franchise, and still good, but not as popular as before, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I always forget about that extra ability of trading the 2 cards for 1 in your discard pile. I need to utilize that more often.
Right,
But
it is helpful.
I do love that the professors that provide lesson or just lesson power. It's so handy because then you have the option of even playing those lesson cards in your deck. Like for instance with Professor Snape, which I think that's who's next. Yes, we'll go right next to him. Professor Severus Snape. He's obviously the head of Slytherin House. Once per game, you may use up to 7 non-healing cards or shuffle up to 7 non-healing cards from your discard pile into your deck. He provides a potions power. And yeah, I like him a lot but the problem there is even if you play him as your starting wizard, you're probably gonna want to place some potion lessons in your deck if you have potion like healing cards that require you to discard them. Because that's always been a predicament where like I'll just throw some cards in a deck like last minute, and then I'll like have forgot that it's like, oh, I need to discard 2 potion lessons, but all I really have is the one that Snape provides, and that's not discardable.
Yeah, no, exactly. I really like Snape. He's probably my favorite character, definitely favorite starting character. So I have a deck where he's my starting character, and it's that charms and potions combination that I mentioned earlier. And then he's also in my character deck, not as a starting character, but just in there.
Totally.
But yeah, I'm with you on that, Doug, as far as like making sure that you have lessons, potion lessons, because he only provides a potion power.
Right.
I don't have that in my deck because it's a little bit of a different combination that's used. And the potion cards that are used are not ones that you need to discard, because I mentioned earlier I hate that. So I've purposely built the deck to where it's not that way. But yeah, if anyone's going to use potions like we mentioned earlier, then yeah, you got to definitely have enough lessons to account for that. But yeah,
For sure.
Snape is for sure. He's a badass.
Yeah, and the artwork's so good. It's very much like how I pictured him when I was reading the books growing up. Like, oh man, scary
That
individual.
chin though.
Yes, and the nose.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
Yeah.
All right, well that brings us to our next character.
That's Ron.
Yes.
Yes. Is that you, Emilio?
Or is it Mona? I forget.
It's Mona.
It's
I
Mona?
think this one's Mona. Yep.
Okay, so
Yes,
Ron,
it's Mona.
it's Mona. All right, Mona. Let's go. All right, so it's Ron Weasley. He is a character. He is a wizard. So you could use him as your starting character if you'd like. He's Gryffindor, hanging with the homies. And what he does, it says, whenever you play a character card, you use up 1 action to play it instead of 2. And actually, Ron Weasley, this one in particular, is used as my starting character for the character deck that I mentioned just a bit ago, because I can play 2 characters for both of my actions, right? So he's I have personally used this one. I do like it a lot, and he looks so nerdy. So.
Love it.
Yeah.
Super cute. Yeah, that's a very handy character card for sure. How about
I don't remember.
Go ahead, Emilio.
No, I just don't remember from the book. Was Ron popular? I guess that this plays on the flavor of him just having a big family or something and being able to like gather people quicker. I don't remember that he was exactly a popular guy, but the art is sort of like, I'm nerdy, but I'm also cool, and I know it. It's like a very like a weird
Smug.
weird smirk.
Yes,
Yeah,
I know what
smug.
you mean.
That's
And yeah, I don't particularly recall him as being popular, but I could be wrong. I guess maybe later in the series, he was probably had attracted like fame as being a very close friend to Harry Potter.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's more like, I know you probably don't know me by my first name, but you definitely know my best friend's first name.
Right.
So I'll just go ahead and chill right here in the shadow while you guys hover over homie. So
Yes,
that's
got
kind of
it.
how it is. Yeah.
That makes sense. All right, and that brings us to our next character, the beloved Rubius Hagrid.
beloved and terrifying art. So the art of
Damn,
Rubius
he does look
Hagrid
scary.
through the sets varies so much, and sometimes he looks like a tender giant, and sometimes he looks like he might have a candy van and waiting for your kids in the corner.
Oh,
so
gosh.
it's really creepy art. And he is not a wizard apparently, so you can't use it as starting character. And whenever one of your creatures does 3 or more damage to your opponent, that creature does 2 more damage. So it adds damage to your creature. You have to have, a few creatures to make this worth it, and the actions that you have to use to play him. And yeah, I don't know. I know that people sometimes are on the fence about this card. I don't know about it. I don't know much about it. I just don't use it. I don't know what both of you have to say about it.
I only just recently got my first copy thanks to you, and I feel like it would be handy in a creature deck. I'm probably gonna play around with that just to see how it goes. But yeah, not a card I'm crazy about. But yeah, again, the artwork I think is what scares me away from it.
Yeah, for sure. I have used this Rubius Hagrid in one of my creature decks. It didn't really do a whole lot, because like once I'm in the game and I'm putting creatures out, and you're playing, right, and you've got creatures that you're putting out, and then your opponent is doing damage to you also. So then you got to think, okay, do I want to waste 2 actions at this point to play this card? Because sometimes like the creatures that I'm using are not that costly, or like they're not going to do that much damage. I'll do 2 or 1 or something, like a black bat or something like that. So I'm like, well, maybe I have like 1 or 2 creatures out that'll do that, and I don't even know if it's worth it. So I have had him in my deck, but he's mostly stayed in my hand.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing about like characters. I think there's only certain cards that say like probably mainly transfiguration cards that are like any card of your opponent's that's in play other than their starting character you can discard. I feel like that's usually the only way you can target like getting rid of your opponent's like assisting characters. And I think I was in a home-based games stream once, and they were talking about like, I wish there was a spell to get rid of characters, and someone said like, wouldn't it be great if the revival put out a card Avada Kedavra and it just gets rid of one of your opponent's creatures? Such an incredible idea. I had to shout that out and give them credit for it and not say it was my own idea. But no, there's a great stream over there. Check them out. But all right, that moves us on from Hagrid to our next adventure, Troll in the Bathroom. The effect is before each of your turns, your opponent takes 2 damage. To solve, your opponent chooses 7 cards in his or her hand and discards them. Your opponent's reward is you take 4 damage. So again, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I would never solve this card either, right? Like,
right.
I'll take the 2 damage and I'll be safe from other like more harmful adventures. And if you have 4 cards left, then I might pay to solve it and kill you, but not a great card in my opinion.
Right.
There's better cards that we'll get into later in the set.
Yeah,
totally.
Yeah, same for that. I wouldn't. It's just one of those. It's just not worth it. It would just probably stay in play. I would take that 2 damage and just look at the troll and how odd he looks. I'd just be like, what is this? But yeah,
pretty goofy looking.
Yeah,
another beautiful foil though, for sure.
Yep.
For the collectors. Oh, and that brings us to one of the most sought after cards in the base set. This one's Mona's.
Yes, so this is number 20. It is the unicorn. A creature. It costs 6 Care Magical Creatures lessons. And the unicorn says, to play this card, discard 1 of your creature lessons from play. You get 1 more action on each of your turns, including the turn you play unicorn. And the unicorn has 6 health. I totally love this card. I know it's one of the more popular ones. Now, Emilio might be able to answer this for me. I don't know if it's popular because it's like a beautiful card or because of what it can do, like its ability, because its popularity really started to rise, I would say about like 8 months ago, when it was just a regular old card, and then somebody sold one and bought it for like $50, and ever since then it's just been climbing and climbing. And I mean, of course I love this card, but this card is not in every one of my creature decks. Matter of fact, I don't have this card in any of my creature decks, and I have I have pretty good creature decks, I should say. This definitely isn't, but then again, I'm not the kind of person, like I've said, I don't like the cards that make you discard one to use it.
Right.
Because I have had an opponent discard a lesson to play this, and then I discard the unicorn. Yeah. And so now you're out a unicorn and you're out a lesson. So even if you had another unicorn, you probably couldn't play it because you don't have that lesson anymore. Because you're waiting until you got 6, you're discarding 1, now you got 5 and you play it. Now, of course, that's not always going to happen. But now that you put the unicorn down, what are they going to try to do? Discard it somehow.
Yeah.
And so
definitely a card that was very popular at the start. So when only base set was around with Hermione, actually we had someone in the Facebook group, Revival group, mention that they had this Hermione deck with unicorn. It's like an old school deck, basically. Also, it is sort of the iconic card in terms of the quote unquote the Charizard of the set. And the recent climb to fame, I think, is just because people know that this card has had a good price memory. It's always been a rare card. As Mona said, it's not super useful in most competitive decks. It was when the base set come out a little bit, But now, and I think it's mostly Pokemon influencers that are trying to sort of copy what they've done and trying to look for that Charizard, quote unquote Charizard card, and climb it up in price. So
Yeah, I could
mostly
see that.
speculation, I would say, but it's a
Sure.
beautiful art.
Very.
Yeah,
100%.
Definitely, and it's a holograph or a foil card. It's just yeah, beautiful to behold. But again, I personally think if I had more of these cards, I would play this in a creature deck in a heartbeat or any deck really, because of how valuable actions are. I'm not sure if not. Yeah, I think platform 9 3/4 is in this set. We'll get to that, but that's another one where it's like actions are just super valuable to me as a player. The more I can do, the better off I'm setting myself up for victory.
Yeah.
But yeah, excellent card.
Totally
Yeah.
agree with that.
So next we have another creature, and that's the Delivery Owl. Cost only 2, has 1 health. Sadly, makes you discard a lesson when you play it for a measly 1 health, but it draws you an extra card before each of your turns. It's sadly too fragile with 1 health. Doesn't do any damage. I mean, I love drawing cards, as I said, and even in Harry Potter where it's damaging you, I like that sort of strategy, but definitely not a great card. Very too fragile. I would use this card if it didn't discard your lesson. If it didn't
For
discard
sure.
the lesson, it would be a better card. Same as Rubius Hagrid. If it was a wizard as a starting character, I might build around him. But under the conditions of discarding a lesson and Hagrid not being like a wizard, I don't like this card either. Yeah. Love the art though. Also another art that was used mostly for newsletter. I think there was like this Wizards newsletter, and I saw this card art in that letter at times.
Right.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm totally with you on that, Emilio. I think again there are some cards that if you discard a lesson to play it or something, then maybe but for me this one just doesn't do anything because it doesn't even do damage. I mean, so you're just going to discard a card so that you can draw a card before your turn, and I don't know, I'm not for it.
Technically damaging you, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly. Yeah, so it's
damage
like
your opponent.
there wasn't
you.
there wasn't a lot of thought maybe with that one. It was just like, we need another rare. Let's just throw this one in there. Yeah.
Not a very valuable card.
Yeah.
Let's see. That brings us up to number 22. Draught of the Living of. I can't even speak. Draught of Living Death. That's a spell card. It costs 8 potion lessons. To play this card, discard 2 of your potion lessons from play, do 12 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice. Now that "or" is what makes this card interesting because there are so many creatures, like I want to say Whomping Willow, I think maybe even Fang, I don't recall. Yeah, Fluffy. They have 12 or more health, and it's always super intimidating when your opponent lays that down in front of you. It's like, how am I ever going to take that out? And to be able to do 12 in one go. But the real question there is, do you just do it to your opponent instead and just try to kill them faster? I like this card a lot, but yeah, again, it's a lot of these potion cards require you discarding lessons. Discarding 2 hurts, but again, it's you pay the price and you get the reward.
Yeah, this card, I love this card personally. Like, I didn't acquire this card until like maybe 5 years ago. This was the last rare that for whatever reason I could never pull growing up. So it's very special. And in terms of strategy, this is sort of the potions ladder. So you play Draw the Living Death, then you play Dog Breath Potion because you have exactly the amount of lessons, and then you can play Malevolent Mixture. So, it can be part of this finishing sort of streak of potions at your opponent.
Yeah.
So for those of you that like that kind of strategy, and the art is just apparently students expired here because this kills you and they're getting sleepy.
Oh my
and
gosh.
being exposed to the potion. So pretty dark.
How many people die at Hogwarts?
Yeah, that's just a bunch of dead Hogwarts students basically in this image, so it's X-rated for sure. I think I haven't personally used this. I don't enjoy the appeal of it. But it's definitely one of those that if I were to, it would be like a last resort kind of kill shot, hoping that my opponent's got like 12 or 13 or something cards left, and then I would get rid of my lessons at that point just to play this and do that 12 damage. But yeah, I mean, I haven't played it personally, not in my decks.
That makes sense.
Okay, so now we're 23, right?
Yep.
Harry Hunting. So we've got it's an adventure. So the effect is your opponent's creature and spell cards need 2 more power to play. To solve, your opponent chooses 7 cards in his or her hand and discards them. And your opponent's reward is your opponent may put a lesson card from his or her discard pile into play. I think this is I've played this adventure. I do like it. I really like playing it at the very beginning of the game. So I've had a couple times where like I'll magically pull it.
Horrible.
No, yeah, I'm
Evil.
a,
Slithering.
She's in
Yeah.
it. She's in it to win it. I play like that too, Mona.
yeah, I'm a monster, and a couple of my friends call me Monster, so there's a reason for it. But yeah, I mean, like because I have a couple adventure decks, and so I have a few copies of these, right? So if pulling it like in my first hand, or like after drawing a couple, and because now even if you're building your lessons, they're still going to need 2 more. You're going to need 2 more extra lessons to play whatever it is that you want to play. And so if you just get rid of your hand at the beginning, or 7 cards from whatever your hand is, then that's going to be good. And then who knows if you have a lesson in your discard pile at that point, because that might be a small discard pile. And so you might not even get the reward, which is just, you laugh on the inside when that happens, of course.
Brutal. Yeah, absolutely brutal adventure.
Yeah.
This is one of those I didn't ever really get until recently. In fact, this might have been one of the missing pieces to my base set puzzle that Emilio helped me out with. So yeah, the artwork, Dudley's friend is just so goofy looking.
Yeah, man. It's like, what is this? Some kind of like weird
Somebody give that
cartoon.
kid some food.
Yeah. Dudley's taking it all is a problem.
Apparently, there we go.
Yeah,
Awesome.
really a control card. I hate control. I know that the competitive scene is about control.
Yeah.
I just don't like control. And in Magic, that's Azorius colors. That's blue and white. I'm very against control strategies. But I understand people that play it. It's very competitive for sure.
Fair enough. Absolutely. That brings us to
So
number
that brings
24.
History of Magic. You have 2 charms spell here, and you look at your opponent's hand and discard all adventures from it. So you study history and you can prevent the future adventures. Really interesting flavor. Good card if Mona is playing her adventures deck. And
there you go, guys.
I just
Get rid of Harry Hunting.
Yeah,
I just wish
please.
that it also did something with in-play adventures. But still, only for 2, it's a really good effect early on in the game.
Exactly.
Yes, I love how low cost that one is. A great card.
Yep.
Which brings us to another low cost charms card. Only costs 3. Incendio, one of my favorite spells. This one is so good, but I wish it had that aura condition of you could do this to your opponent. But it reads, count the number of charms lessons you have in play. Do that much damage to a creature of your choice. And it's like, again, when I was saying like with the Whomping Willow, this is perfect if you have like a bunch of charms lessons in play, and like say a location like Wand Shop that Mona mentioned earlier. It just really exponentially, you could do a boatload of damage. But again, it's exclusively to a creature of your choice. And I'm like, there's been so many times that I could completely finish someone else or my opponent off if it said I could do that damage to my opponent. Or you have this card in your hand and your opponent's not even playing creatures. It's like, it's such a wasted potential card.
Yeah, it becomes a dead weight, and also like it's charms lessons, so not power. So it has to be the actual lessons in play. I just hope in the future, if the rival people are listening to us, if you build a card like a Horcrux that you can attach, like affect the creature, and then whatever damage you do to the creature, you do to your opponent as well, it'll be really cool to then incendio both a creature and your opponent. That strategy is actually seen a lot in Magic the Gathering, in which like you curse a creature and then you damage your opponent as well. So maybe in a situation that you can make it damage your opponent, it's good. Otherwise, it can be a dud in your hand, and that's
exactly.
Yeah.
All right, that brings us to our next one.
Almost a fourth of the way.
Yes, we're doing it.
Yes. So this is card number 26. It is Malevolent Mixture. It costs 5 potions. It is a spell, and it says to play this card, discard 2 of your potion lessons from play, do 10 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice. So yeah, this is it's a pretty good card. Again, I personally I haven't used this card. I'm not, as you guys know, not really a fan of the discarding this to get that. Maybe it's like a personality thing. I have no idea, but I'm just like, I don't want to get rid of this. I want to be able to get more of it, So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely brutal. It's honestly not that expensive for what it does. I mean, do 10 damage and it only costs 5. I mean, that really is a good card. This might be one of the exceptions that I mentioned earlier.
Right. Yeah. No, this one comes in handy for sure. But again, I've seen my wife play the potions deck we have, and this is in there, and she does always like get upset when she has to discard the 2 lessons. But yeah, the payoff, totally worth it. Awesome artwork too. It's such a creepy looking, malevolent mixture.
Is
No
it
kidding.
walking?
Apparently, yeah. It's got
Yeah.
Stands. Yeah, it has
Yeah,
chicken legs or something.
Chicken legs, yeah. Not dragon at all.
No.
No.
Okay, so now goes Meet the Centaurs. Is that for
Yes.
me?
Yep, that's you.
Cool. So this is an adventure. We have a different Hagrid that we saw. Hagrid is all over the place with the art in the set. And in this adventure, your opponent plays with their hand face up. So Draco Malfoy, this is for you. And your opponent discard his or her hand to solve it. And the reward is that your opponent now sees you play with your hand face up for the rest of the game. So niche card. If you ever have Draco Malfoy, this is sort of useful. I don't think anyone will pay it unless you have Draco Malfoy, right?
Right.
The reward is really not great, though.
Agreed.
Right,
Yeah. I don't see this one in play too often, but yeah, I guess like you said, if you're playing Draco Malfoy, that one would come in handy until they discard their hand and then it backfires on you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that brings us to our next creature. It's the Mountain Troll. Good God, he's an ugly one. 4 damage each turn and a health of 4. It doesn't cost any lessons or anything. It's just right away you could get this creature into play. I like this card. It costs 8 as far as lesson power of Care of Magical Creatures, obviously. But I would probably play this in a deck.
It's a big fatty. It's one of those big hitters. And the start of the game, when only was around, this was like the card to get, right? It was the big guy that will end the games. But now we have better options. But still, a bulky card, basically.
Totally.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with it costing 8, it's pretty pricey when you have all the other creatures to choose from. But it is 4 damage. And if you've got a couple of those in your deck, and even if you have 2 out or something, then obviously you're definitely going to get somewhere. So it's not too bad.
Definitely
lost steam with time.
That makes sense. And speaking of more creatures and Draco Malfoy, this one's Mona's.
Yes, so here we've got Mrs. Norris. It is a creature, of course. And so it says your opponent plays with his or her hand face up. So it's kind of sort of mimicking, I guess, the adventures that we just read.
Yep.
So you'd probably want to play this, if you have like a strategy with Draco or something along those lines, so that you could look at your opponent's hand. Honestly, just seeing your opponent's hand is good, because then you can sort of learn their strategy, right? So,
right.
Even if you don't have a Draco, but you just play this, then you can see, okay, well, they draw a card and you can see what they are. There are some pros to it. I personally haven't used this card just because if I'm going to put a creature in my deck, I don't really care for it to be this one. And having this combination with Draco hasn't really been something that I'd like to do, but I could see why people would.
Right. Any creature that has a health of 1, just I don't really feel comfortable playing, because it just seems like they could just be wiped out immediately.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting, the ongoing thing that the creatures like the centaurs or the cats are the ones that can have the knowledge of your hand. Sort of like a very interesting way to put that. Should we move on to Norbert?
Sure.
Let's.
Norbert, the second powerhouse in the set, especially when it was the base set only, right? It's low cost card. It costs 4, but you have to discard 2 of your Care for Magical Creature lessons, but it damages for 5 each turn with a health that is 3. So it's not high, not low. It's average.
Little baby dragon.
It's a baby dragon. It has a teddy bear and it's in a box. So, there's a lot going on in that art.
I never even noticed the teddy bear. That is adorable.
That is adorable. So yeah, that's it. It's sort of a risky card to play. If it gets knocked out, you lost 2 lessons, 2 actions, and the action of playing the dragon. It's a big setback if this card gets discarded. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Seems popular though, for sure. Well, that brings us to our next card, which is actually an item, and it's our first wand, if I'm not mistaken. This is
Mhm.
the Phoenix
Mhm.
Feathered Wand. Costs 7 lesson power of charms, and it reads: play this card only if you have cards in play that provide at least 3 charms power. If you play this card and you already have a wand in play, discard the old one, and it provides 4 charms power. So yeah, this card is phenomenal if you have a
Mhm.
charms deck. Very, very handy to boost your lesson count.
Yep, definitely for sure.
It is a good way to boost. It's a flavor miss for me. Phoenix Feather Wand is Harry's wand, and he got
Yes.
it at the start of the series. So to make the requirement that you have to have some sort of knowledge before using this wand is very weird choice. And I understand that they want to make the most powerful wand, the one that gave you the most charms, be Harry's wand. But yeah, a miss for me in terms of flavor.
The
But
only thing
useful if you have a big curve.
The only
Mhm.
thing about that I might even argue, and I could just be wrong, is when I just recently watched the Sorcerer's Stone movie, and Ollivanders was saying like the brother of this wand is Voldemort's wand. So I'm guessing Voldemort's wand is also a Phoenix Feather
Yeah,
wand.
yeah,
Well,
Mhm.
definitely.
that's
Yeah.
maybe the flavor there is like we all know that Harry was transferred some of Voldemort's power that night. So like by him even being like the wand that assigned to him is that wand, it's like inherently he's already has like some kind of like knowledge, like him disappearing the glass and everything. I feel like he has knowledge that he's just or power he's unaware of, so that could have something to do
I
with it.
just
But
want to say that I stand corrected, and I
no.
love that story.
Well, hey, no, I'm
You win.
just speculating
Mic
here.
It
drop.
was really good, though. I love it.
Very cool. All right, that's what I mean. I'm wondering if they put that much thought into it. Maybe I'm just fighting
Probably
for
Or
not.
maybe it was just you, Doug, because
yeah.
you're like, I'm gonna read the book and I'm gonna figure out. No,
Yes,
no, that
this
that that might be.
yes. There we go. All right. Well, that brings us to one of my favorite cards in the set. This one's Mona's.
Yeah, so it is platform 9 3/4. It is a transfiguration spell, so it costs 5 transfiguration lessons. And it says to play this card, discard one of your lessons from play. You get 2 more actions this turn. So definitely a really good card if you're kind of whether it's right in the middle of the game or towards the end and you have like a real like heavy hand and you know what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
To have 4 actions in one turn is unbelievable. So
Yeah, and I love how it just says discard one of your lessons. It doesn't specify what lesson type.
mhm.
It's you get to
Mhm.
choose. So
Yeah.
that's very valuable rare card in this base set for sure.
Yep,
Yeah,
agreed.
it's good if you're transferring. I feel that this is good if you have a combo of some sort. Otherwise, you're trading an action of playing the lesson and the action of playing this card for 2 lessons, 2 actions. Sorry.
Action. Yep.
Mhm.
So it is very niche if you need to play more cards that turn. But
Yeah.
otherwise, it's just a transfer of an action from a previous turn.
That makes
Right.
sense. I see what you're
Yeah.
saying for
Right.
sure.
So now it's my turn. Now this is I think the card I hate the most in the set in terms of the art, because I pulled this card so many times. It
Oh
was
no.
just annoying. And then like it's a potions ingredients. It's an item. It costs 5 potions, and when a spell damages you, you may discard this card and prevent that damage. So it's actually a pretty good card if you're before Dobby's help. Basically, this is a great card to avoid damage from a
Right.
spell. Right, it has to be a spell. But the thing that makes this good is that you choose, right? So it's not like when you receive damage next turn, discard this, right? So it's optional. You can save it for when you need it. And Hermione, I don't know what happened to her, but something happened to her.
Ooh,
She
yeah.
just looks like she's
Right.
staring into the end of days, and it's scary art.
Yeah. For sure, for sure.
Agreed. That brings us to our next card, Raven to Writing Desk. It only costs 1 transfiguration power, and it says if your opponent has 2 or more creatures in play, choose one of them and discard it. So again, transfiguration is very much about control, and yeah, being able to discard 1 of 2 creatures is pretty valuable. I like having this card in a deck, but again, if you are facing a deck that doesn't have any creature cards, it's just dead weight.
Yeah, definitely on that. It's always good to be able to get rid of your opponent's creatures. I mean, that's a wonderful thing. I've used this card a couple times in my decks, but definitely not my go-to.
Yeah, don't play 2 creatures if you know that your opponent has this card and they just lost this space in their hand. Also, the
Mhm.
reference to Alice in Wonderland is amazing. I love the Raven into Writing Desk riddle reference
Oh,
here.
Oh, awesome. I was unaware of that. That's very
me
cool.
too.
It's just for listeners. That's just a riddle that had no answer in the book, and then the author answered it, but it was like a mystery for the longest time. Yeah, right, whatever.
Interesting. No,
Alice in
that's cool. A
Wonderland.
little tidbit.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
All
now
right.
shrinking potion.
Yep, that's Mona.
All right, so Shrinking Potion is a spell card. It costs 8 potion lessons. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to you. Again, that's really good, but the kind of course, like, damage as far as like doing this much damage to your deck, but it doesn't prevent all of what spell cards would do to you. So again, like Venomous Tentacular, Dobby's Help, things like that. Are still pretty much up for grabs because it's not technically damage done to you. So,
Right.
but yeah, so it's definitely a good card for maybe like charms damage, like you do 5 or 6 here and they like stupefy, things like that. But for 8, you got to make sure that that's kind of costly, and then you'd hate to play that and then also have somebody mess up your deck, right? So
Right. And I feel like when you play a card like this, I feel like that incentivizes your opponent to not even attempt to damage you. And then they just like use their turns to like play lessons or anything else, like adventurers, characters. So yeah, it seems like it could be handy, but I don't think practically it's going to save you too many
sure,
times.
Yeah, I
right.
agree. It's also a potion that is a spell, which makes me really angry. And second, if in the future we have a time turner that lets you play cards in your opponent's turn, then this could be
Ooh.
better, right?
Oh,
Because then you can respond to whatever your opponent is doing. But right now, yeah, your opponent will just not play their cards and they may just draw or do something else.
and
So
they'll just
not
play it next
great.
time. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And
All right.
now we have Titilando, one of my favorite spells in the in the game, just because who doesn't want to shoot creepy purple hands that tickle your opponents to forgetting what they're doing, right? So
Yeah.
Yes.
this is a spell that costs 9. It basically does 3 damage to your opponent or creature. So that's a good flexibility there. And then your opponent chooses and discards 3 cards from their hand. So that's really cool. Really powerful effect. It costs a lot, but if you have Albus Dumbledore and some other one-shots or Bravado or whatever you're using, you
Hmm.
can really do some damage with this tickling spell. That is just evil. But if I were a wizard, I would want to learn this spell as soon as possible because I just feel it's hilarious and powerful.
You
Oh,
are.
definitely.
Now we have exams.
No, that's a great card. Now we're on to number 37, Transfiguration Exam. Discard all creatures from play, even your own, it says in parentheses.
Just in
Gosh,
case.
yeah, that's the thing.
Hmm.
As long as you don't have creatures in play, that's a great card. But no, even if you did, maybe if there were like the delivery owl or some like 1 health creatures, like it's worth getting rid of your creatures to get rid of your opponents. I like this card. It's the only problem with it is it costs 10 lesson power of transfiguration. So got to have a lot of lessons in play to even be able to do that. But it is very powerful to get rid of all creatures.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of see this unfolding in a way where like your opponent has a lot of really good creatures, and then like you said, Doug, maybe you don't.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, because of how expensive it is, it's also assumed that it's deeper into the game, and
Right.
so you're taking that damage, and so like sometimes, like for my creature decks, I might have like Umbrella Flowers or Leaping Toadstools or one of the creatures in play that could take the damage for me.
Right.
So now if that's helping me out and I got to get rid of them because my opponent has a really good, so that might kind of be a little bit tricky. Or maybe you don't have creatures at all, like you said, and that's even better. So.
Absolutely. That's how I'd put this deck or put this card into decks that don't have creatures.
Right.
Definitely. And you have some creepy art. Hermione looks like she is in another dimension and she's high on something. And Harry Potter forgot how to hold his wand.
Yeah,
I don't know what he's doing there.
Yeah,
but
he's actually painting.
Yeah, that is goofy. I'm glad you
goofy
pointed
guy.
that out. That is really silly. Well, that brings us to our last rare of the base set. We're making progress here, guys. This one's Mona's, though.
For sure. So it is a transfiguration test. It's a transfiguration spell that costs 5 lessons. If your opponent has 2 or more creatures in play, he or she chooses one of them and discards the rest. Then, if you have 2 or more creatures in play, choose one of them and discard the rest. So, yeah, again, one of those cards that does damage to the both of you, so yourself and your opponent, or not damage, I should say, but it kind of makes it a little bit not worth it, I guess. I don't know how else to say it. It's just like, wait. I mean, I want to do that to my opponent, but I got to do it to me too. Like, nah.
Exactly.
So,
yeah, I'd hesitate to use this one myself.
Yeah. And they already have flying pigeon bricks, which sounds terrifying because they're everywhere, right?
Yes, that landing is tough on those legs. I could only imagine.
Yeah, and talking about rough landings, we can now move on to 4 Privet Drive.
Oh,
and
boy.
Yes.
4 Privet Drive is the definition of evil. I'm sure Mona plays this 4 and in every deck. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah,
But like,
I
it
do.
is.
No, not
Mona, you were
everything.
supposed to pretend to at least not play this card. Come on.
Savage.
Okay, so this adventure is basically doesn't let your opponent play spells. In order to solve this, is your opponent has to discard 6 cards from their hand, and as a reward, a huge reward of drawing 1 card. This is evil. You're stuck with the Dursleys. They don't want to listen to any magic, and you're just, big F. So it is sort of like really horrible. The art is sort of this more like, I don't want to say the name because I don't know who's listening, but it looks like a political figure, sort of very pompous and fat.
Oh, yep.
So it is really,
Yes.
it's really interesting.
It's a good interpretation of the Dursleys. They look like snobby people that you don't want to associate with. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And poor Harry in the corner.
Yeah, poor Harry.
Harry looks like more like Finding Waldo. Here.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it gives me Waldo vibes for
Yeah.
sure. I'm glad you said that. All right, well that brings us to our next card, which is Alchemy, a very handy card. Only costs 2 transfiguration power. Search your deck. You may take up to 2 lesson cards from your deck, show them to your opponent, and put them into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. So yeah, for someone like me, that's very contingent on getting a lot of lessons in play early on. If you can pull this card early in the game, it just helps you like boost your hand. There's another one, I can't recall which one it is, but rather than putting it into your hand, you just put it right into play. That's obviously preferred. But yeah,
There's
this is
an
a good
owl
card.
that does that. Yeah.
Oh, that's what it was. Okay.
Yeah.
And there you have Nicholas Flamel, I assume. He's like
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
some stuff with
Alchemy.
a red liquid, which is probably mercury.
Or Jello.
Yes, it's the melted philosopher's stone.
Okay, so the next one we've got is Apothecary. It is a spell. It costs 5 potions, and it reads, to play this card, discard 2 of your cards from your hand, search your deck. You may take a card that needs potion power from your deck, show it to your opponent, and then put it into your hand, then shuffle. So I personally have never used this card. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And I mean, it might be good for somebody, it might be good for a deck. It's just, it has never fallen into my hands to a point where I would say, hey, I really want to use this. So, but
I think for anybody that's like desperately searching for like 1 or 2 of their only healing cards in a deck, this is a great card to just go find it and put it in your hand. But yeah, again, not one that I use either.
For sure.
Yeah, it is a tutor, but it's a little pricey for the 2 cards. So.
Yeah,
for sure.
And just as you should disappear any sort of hope of using that card, I think. But you can then use the spell Apparate to teleport yourself out of an adventure that your opponent has played. Apparate only costs 1, and it escapes an adventure, except for private drive because you can play spells. So
Except for a few,
Oh,
yeah. If there's a
that's
few
rough.
adventures in play.
it's pretty rough. But yeah, cool card. You have, I think, early McGonagall there showing her powers and disappearing into the flu,
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
into the
definitely.
to her apparate.
flu.
Emilio's on fire. His
Yo,
transitioning
I
abilities.
know.
I'm not going to be able to transition like he did, but next is Baby Dragon. No, this is another creature similar to Norbert, but a little less powerful. Yeah, it's like Baby Norbert, really. Instead of discarding 2 care of magical creatures like Norbert, you only have to discard one of those lessons from play. And then, yeah, damage each turn is 3 for this guy and health of 2. So, yeah, another little dragon that could help you along your path to victory.
And he also looks like Yoshi or like Yoshi's cousin, which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah,
Love
if you
it.
guys dig that.
Definitely love the steam coming out of the nose.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so next we've got Bluebell Flames, which is a
Woo!
spell. It costs 7 charms lessons, also has a promo, right? So that's
Yes.
pretty cool. So it says do 4 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice. There's that or that Doug likes.
Yes.
Yeah, so pretty cut and dry. It's a really cool spell. Yeah.
I feel like it's a fan favorite. This one appears in a lot of decks.
Yeah, it does.
And weird art though. You have
Mhm.
them with the Devil's Snare, and she's apparently burning it. I don't remember. I don't
Yeah.
remember. I don't remember much from the if she used this spell in the books. I know she does. She doesn't use the one that she uses in the movies.
Mhm.
But this is counterproductive. You're wrapped on this thing and you're burning it, so you're burning yourself. I don't know what's going on. Cool card, regardless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And the burning Bluebell Flames now transition to the burning Bitterroot Balm. So basically, this is another potion that's a spell and not an item, so it makes me very, very sad. And to play
Yeah.
this card, you discard one of your potions lessons and you heal 10. So you take 10 non-healing cards from your deck, from your discard pile, which I'll call graveyard because I'm a Magic player, and you shuffle them back to your deck. Yeah, so another healing spell. I think we've being very clear about healing, and
Yeah.
sort of the same applies to this card. The art is cool though. I love this. I used to love to look at this card, and I used to have potion bottles, quote unquote, air quotes, potion bottles around my room. So really cool card.
Mhm.
Definitely. In a pinch,
cool.
only the cost of 1 lesson, healing 10 is pretty attractive.
Yeah.
And that brings us to our next item. It's actually an item, not a potion. But no, this item's called Cage. It only costs 2 care of magical creature power, and it reads, during your turn, you may discard this card from play and use an action to choose a creature in play, yours or your opponent's, and return it to its owner's hand. And it also provides a care of magical creatures power. So this card's interesting because it's like the parentheses, yours or your opponent's creature. Like, why would you want to return your own creature to your hand? I'm assuming that's if they had already started putting damage counters on your creature. By you returning it to your hand, it'll heal it. Otherwise, you most likely will probably just discard your opponent's creature.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, pretty interesting card for sure.
Okay, so that takes us to number 47, Confundus, which is a spell. It costs 5 charm lessons. Your opponent chooses 2 cards in his or her hand and discards them, or 1 if he or she only has 1 left.
Yeah.
So another spell that's pretty cut and dry. So if somebody has, just like a few cards in their hand, it's obviously a really good card to play because then they only have a few options left. So
totally, very good one.
Yeah, it's sad that your opponent chooses, but yeah, it's
right.
Hand control is always a way to lose friends. And so now we move to Dagon Alley, and this is an adventure instead of a location. And the effect is that your opponents can't use action to draw cards. Then to solve, your opponent has to escape a total of 7 actions.
So depressing.
That hurts.
But the reward is that you may draw, their opponent may draw any number of cards. So this is a great card in combos, though. Like because you can get a few ways you can get the reward yourself, and yeah, it could be useful. But alone as a card, it's quite horrible, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely not good to be on the receiving end of this. Of course, if you're a competitive player or whatever and you play it, then it just kind of is what it is, I guess.
Mhm.
To skip 5 actions is shitty, but to skip 7, I
Yeah.
mean, you're
That's
like,
a total
"Eh."
of 3.5 turns.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, exactly. Or I guess,
Or if you have
yeah,
Malfoy, well,
Oh yeah, sure.
yes. Oh my goodness, yeah. So that's definitely tough.
Absolutely brutal card. Which brings us to our next card. We're at 49 now. Dog Breath Potion, a 6 cost potions lesson. To play this card, discard one of your potion lessons from play. Do 8 damage to your opponent or creature. Very versatile. A little bit. It's like what Malevolent Mixture, but just 8 instead of 10, and you only
Yeah.
discard 1 lesson.
this is the step down, right? You have 8 and play Draw the Living Death, discard 2 lessons. Now you have 6. You can play Dog Breath Potion. Then you have 5 and can play Malevolent Mixture.
Ah,
So
that's right.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But what dog has this breath? I don't know. Maybe the dog of hell. But this is
Yeah.
really weird.
Maybe Sirius Black when he's a dog because he's been kind of
Um,
stuck everywhere.
Surprisingly,
I
it's my one cat. He has horrible breath, but no, not a dog at all.
guess.
Hopefully not fire though.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
right.
now we will get to why Diagon Alley could be a good card.
Yeah,
Ah,
so that takes us to Draco's Trick. So it's a spell. It costs 7 Transfiguration, and it says discard the adventure you've played. You get the reward.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very powerful card. It's like we're gonna get to the Quidditch Cup eventually, Quidditch set. There's a catch the snitch where it's like you just win
Yep.
the match you just played. So I feel like you play an adventure, and then on the next turn, if you can get Draco's Trick into play, very awesome combo.
For sure.
Definitely. And now we move to Dragonheart Wand. And also a card that disturbs me is Dragon Heartstring, but whatever.
Right.
And it's a 5. It costs 5. It's an item. It's a wand. It provides 3 charm power, and then you have to have at least 2 charms power in play in order to play this one. And of course, you have to discard this another one if you play this. You can only have one in play. Main point.
Right.
Yeah.
This is if you're depending on your speed, this is maybe the one that you will go for.
Yeah.
For higher decks, you go for the Phoenix one, and the average deck will go for the one that we're gonna review, in a bit.
Yep.
Mhm.
But that's about it, really.
Yep, that's a good one. I love the wands that are available. Next card is Fumos. Costs 7 charms power lessons, and it says do 2 damage to each creature, even your own. So yeah, another one of those. Like instead of discarding all the creatures, this will just do 2 damage to every single creature in play.
Yeah, this is one of those cards that I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Well, like I don't know. It's just maybe I'm not that kind of player. Maybe there's other
Yeah.
players out there that have that understanding or would want to get rid of theirs or something. But definitely not me. Although the art, I will say, is good. David Day is a really good guy, and he's a really good artist. So
Love it. Yes,
that.
I
absolutely.
love the art. I question the color of that smoke.
Yeah,
if you get to
yeah.
see it,
I'm with you on that.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Sounds chocolatey.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's strategies for Fumos. You can really, if you don't have creatures, there's things you could do with it, but definitely not the greatest card. And that takes us to a creature that is unaffected by Fumos or not killed by Fumos, and that's the guard dog. Costs 7. It's a dragon dog by the looks of the art, and it damages for 3 each turn, and it has a healthy lifespan of 5. Vanilla card has no effect. So yeah, this is a card, and it does damage, and that's really about it.
Yeah, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
I love creatures that don't cost any lessons. That's the best kind of creature.
Oh, that's true. I forgot.
Yeah.
About it. It's a dog. It cares about you. Yeah, I guess.
Next is an adventure hiding from Snape. The effect: your opponent can't play item cards. To solve, your opponent chooses 4 item cards in his or her hand and discards them. I hope you have items. Opponent's reward is your opponent may search his or her deck for any card and put it into his or her hand. Then shuffle. Then they shuffle their deck. So. Yeah, this one's pretty rough. Like I said, if you don't even have many items in your deck at all, like how are you going to solve this?
Yeah,
well, you don't want to solve it because it won't affect you, right?
Right. Oh, well, yeah, that's true. Oh, yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, and it's one of those cards that's just like, okay, I guess kind of like what you were insinuating, Doug, is like I'm just taking a shot in the dark here, hoping that you have items, because
That's a good point.
otherwise, like, why would I even play this? Like of all the other adventures, and again, of course, we have to put ourselves in the mindset of the creators when they first came out with base set.
Right.
They didn't know the future cards, right? Or maybe not all of them, and so. We were kind of limited on adventures, but this definitely is one. It's not one of the adventures that I would play. Of course, I love the art. I love the invisibility cloak back there that Harry has on. But yeah, I'm not going to play this adventure.
I guess the point I was trying to make earlier is like the kind of decks I make that are like charms heavy. I only maybe put 1 or 2 wands in there, so like I wouldn't be able to play that one wand I have, but because I'd have to discard 4 of them. But either way, yeah, it's very unique situational card for sure.
Yeah.
But that brings us to Kelpie, Mona.
Okay, yes. So Kelpie is a creature. It costs 3 creature lessons. And so it says to play this card, discard 1 of your creature lessons from play. Whenever a spell card damages you, you may let Kelpie take that damage instead. That's obviously a really good effect that Kelpie has, and it also does 1 damage each turn with 5 health. So if somebody plays like a Stupefy or something, then you could discard Kelpie, let them take that instead of your deck taking that, essentially.
Yeah, very handy.
Yeah.
That art too. God, what an ugly looking
very
horse.
ugly looking horse.
What's a Kelpie?
Yeah.
I was not sure. When I see that art, it makes me think of Thestral, but it's not. I'm sure it's separate.
Yeah, it's whatever that is, I guess. Purple fire hair and yeah.
Yeah, and that will take us to a logic puzzle of trying to figure out what Kelpie is, but also your opponent's adventures. So logic puzzle costs 6. It's a spell, even though you're just using logic, and it discards an adventure your opponent has played, and you get the reward. So this reverse Draco's trick. And once again, this doesn't work on 4 private drive. Not even logic can get through to those people.
So it's a spell. Yes,
it is. Yeah,
it's really cool, but you will mostly be okay with the apparate one. That only costs 1. You have to know what rewards the opponent's has, I guess. There's just better options to discard adventures. You have to know your opponent's deck to see if it's worth to, play 5 more power to do the same thing you could do with a 1 power card. But if it's the rewards good, if it's Diagonally, for example, then this is worth it. But most of the time, it's a shot in the dark.
Yep, for sure.
Yep. That brings us to number 57, Mysterious Egg. Costs 4 Care Magical Creatures. Search your deck. You may take a creature card from your deck, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your deck. So yeah, great for creature decks just to kind of populate a specific creature, a dragon, for instance. I love playing this card and then grabbing a dragon. So yeah, very good card.
Yep, for sure. And next one we've got is Nurture. That is a spell card. It costs 2 Care Magical Creature lessons. And it says remove all damage counters from all of your creatures. So this is one of those good ones if you do have a couple pricey creatures in play, something like Fluffy or Whomping Willow or something like that. And, maybe a couple spells have done some damage to it, then you could heal them with this. Although Fluffy is pretty... its health is like 21, I believe, which is
gosh.
Yeah, so it's I mean, you're gonna definitely have to keep Fluffy in play for quite some time. But yes, this is definitely good. For me, I kind of think of more like plants with this. So like leaping toadstools, umbrella flowers, things like that, I would use to be able to keep them in play. And when they're kind of close to their end, I would take those damage counters off and revive them, I guess, if you could say. So I would like this card in a creature deck with that.
Totally.
Definitely. And you have Hagrid looking, again, very weird in this picture.
Yeah,
he looks more approachable, though. I don't know.
Definitely more approachable. Not like the corpse of Mr. Burns here. So now we have Ollivanders. Ollivanders looks like the Crypt Keeper, but really cool art. Really, I really enjoy the art. All jokes aside, you have a ton of wands that look more like paintbrushes. But
they do.
Who's really, talking about that? And it gets you for 1 chance Ollivanders will go to your graveyard or discard pile and look for an item and give it to you. So really cool. We know Ollivander by fetching wands. He fetches any item in the card game. One of my favorite card in my item decks because if your key card has been used or played or discarded, you get it back with a very simple card. So
Yeah,
Definitely.
one of my
And this
top
is
cards for sure.
this is another one that has alternate artwork, if I'm not mistaken, Mona.
that's correct. The alternate artwork is really, really cool. It was a promo card, and it's
It's more cartoonish though.
it's more cartoonish. Yeah, of course. They're both great. Yeah, definitely the Ollivanders. I think this Ollivanders art is also in the art for some of the chocolate frogs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and then
The
I think
card.
there's a couple. Yeah, the card itself, and there's like some puzzles and things like that with this specific art. But yeah, both arts definitely worth having a copy of each.
Definitely. Well, that brings us to our next adventure. Peeves causes trouble. Whenever your opponent draws one or more cards, he or she takes 1 damage. To solve, your opponent skips a total of 5 actions. Those actions don't need to be one after the other. And then the opponent's reward is you take 3 damage. So again, I don't see this one in play often. I'm sure it might be more popular than I realize. Do you guys utilize it?
I mean, this will be good against my Harry Potter deck because I'm trying to draw more cards and use resources quickly. So it definitely, once again, it's a niche card that normally will only do 1 damage, and your opponent will never skip 5 actions to solve. And it's very upsetting that even the card game designers knew to include peeves in the first expansion, and the movie designers just scrapped them from everything. So sad memory.
Right. Yeah. I probably wouldn't use this in my decks personally, but yeah, like the art.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, you get a pet toad now, Mona.
Yes. Okay. So we've got Pet Toad. It costs 2 care magical creatures, and whenever a spell card damages you, you may let Pet Toad take that damage instead. So similar to Trevor, but I guess we've got other pet toads as well. And of course, this pet toad also offers 1 health. So it's kind of cool, just like Kelpie, I suppose, except for all the complicated stuff. But yeah.
Also only works 1, and you can't heal it, right? Because it'll just die.
Right. It will just die.
And then if you haven't died, you can have Pomfrey's Pick Me Up. Pomfrey's Pick Me Up is a 3 potions. Once again, spell, even though it's obviously a potion. And it puts 3 non-healing cards from your discard pile into the bottom of your deck, and then you draw a card. At least if it would shuffle your deck, it would be great. But it's still good to sometimes heal a little bit. You draw a card, it replaces itself. I just wouldn't use this card. There's better healing spells, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. I agree with that sentiment for sure.
For sure, me too.
Next, we have Potions Exam, a pretty costly one. It costs 10 potions power. Another spell, your opponent chooses 3 of his or her cards in play and discards them. If your opponent has fewer than 3 cards in play, he or she discards them all. Your opponent may prevent this by choosing one of his or her potion lessons in play and discarding it. So if they are not thrilled about the idea of having to discard cards, they can opt out and just basically get rid of 1 potion lessons in play. So either way, you win by making them choose that. So it's an interesting card. I don't think I've played this just because of how expensive it is. The 10 cost is pretty hard to swallow.
Agreed. Same for sure.
And you have the art. It looks like a drag queen. It looks like Raven from RuPaul's Drag Race. It's like it's very drag queen art here.
Yes, which we love, of course.
Yeah. Of course, I love drag race.
Oh,
and Raven is one of the top drags.
That's so funny.
Okay, so after that, we've got Reptile House. And so that is an adventure. The effect is your opponent can't use more than 1 action to play lesson cards during each of his or her turns. To solve, your opponent chooses 4 of his or her lessons in play and discards them. And the reward is your opponent may draw a card. I know.
Yeah.
This
4
is bad.
lessons. That's really tough. Yeah, this was one of the missing pieces I had Emilio help me out with too. I never pulled this card as a kid. I never really utilized it in decks, but yeah, it seems pretty malicious.
Yeah, well, it definitely goes along with the image there as malicious as that is as well.
Yes.
So I guess they're kind of like, well, let's make this brutal because this is bad.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting art for sure, with Harry's glasses pointing there. And those are some huge hands of the Dudley's friend there. You
Yes.
know what they say about big hands, big personalities.
Big
So let's
gloves.
move to the, you can steal your cauldron better with Silver Cauldron, which is our next card, and that's an 8-power card. It one of the coolest arts for cauldrons, in my opinion. Really
Oh,
spooky,
yeah.
green, ooky, spooky art. And then it provides 5 potions power, but you have to discard 2 potion lessons to play this card. So, I don't know why you want to go above 8 power, but if you do, this is the card for you.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. I've had a couple opponents play this card and then I end up discarding it, and it's just sort of one of those things that like now you're at 6 lessons, which I guess, hopefully that works for you. So
Yeah.
Right.
You get a good one now, though.
Yes. Next is Snuffling Potion. I know this one's popular. Only
Yeah.
costs 4 potion lesson power. Next turn, whenever your opponent draws a card, he or she discards it instead of putting it into his or her hand. And I think we've been talked about on our first episode, perhaps, was the combo that's involved with Snuffling Potion with the Burrow. If you happen to have to keep drawing cards and this makes you keep discarding it, you're just in an infinite loop until you die. So yeah, Snuffling Potion
It's
in the
the
right
greatest.
context can be really good. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We've all had sneezing attacks that don't stop ever, so you can relate to this.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. That artwork for
Yes.
sure.
For
There you
sure.
go.
Yeah, I actually haven't used that combination yet, but I'm very excited to. So
I just got my first copy of the Burrow. I'm just right there
Ooh.
with you. I'm very excited.
nice, very cool. Let us
That
know
brings
how
us.
that feels.
Oh, I definitely will. This brings us to possibly one of my favorite cards of all time. This one's Mona's though.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Stupefy is a really, really good spell. It's a charms. It costs 6 charms lessons, and it's just as simple as do 5 damage to your opponent. So this is a really great way of just saying, hey, I'm just gonna straight up damage you, nothing else, not to your creature, not to anything but you. And so it's really cool, especially if you've got 2 of them in your hand, then that's 10 damage right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
And that art, God, breathtaking.
Very, very beautiful.
It is very beautiful, very stylistic Dumbledore there.
Mhm.
And
Exactly.
just before I take root, which is my card, I just want to say, Doug, if you're gonna play that combo against your partner, I think you better prepare to sleep in the couch.
Oh,
Because
true.
that's
Yeah,
just
she's not gonna be
horrible.
too happy about that. No, yeah.
Yes.
So
Use one of us instead.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point.
Well, take root is a transfiguration spell, costs 5, and then your opponent chooses one of their creatures in play and discards it. So yeah, you're giving your opponent a choice to discard one of their creatures. I don't like giving my opponents choices,
Right.
but you might want to play this for whatever reason. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's really
sure.
cool art, though. You have this wolf becoming a tree.
Yeah, and it's
Definitely.
watching itself become a tree, which is also sort of depressing at the same time. It's like I'm no longer this vicious beast. I'm actually now just sticks. So this is
I
great.
didn't think about that. Are you okay, Mona? Do we need a wellness check?
Yes. No, this animal needs a wellness check.
Right. Poor Dick
Cool.
Root.
Let's take a more uplifting tone then.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, speaking of
With the next
uplifting,
card.
yeah, Transmogrify is the picture of a cat with wings. I love it. It's a low cost card, 2 transfiguration power. To play this card, discard one of your creatures from play, search your deck. You may take a creature from your deck, show it to your opponent, and put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So basically, if you have a creature in play that you're not thrilled with, you can just get another one in your hand.
Exactly. Yeah. Pretty cut and dry.
Yeah. Cats are horrible. I love cats, but they're really sneaky. Imagine if a cat could fly. I think they would take over the world.
That would
Yes.
be terrifying. The world is not ready for flying.
No.
Also, just a very quick note on this card. I'm a Timmy, and I read it that you could basically discard a creature in play and put one from your deck into play. So, of course, I was like, oh, yeah, of course, with Fluffy. I can just play Fluffy on turn 2. You can't do that. It goes to your hand. I'm just talking to my earlier, younger self.
Yeah, no, I've misread cards or not even or glossed over certain details. So no, I've been there, and yeah, it's easy to do with a card like this. And yeah, it's number 69. Nice, we're making our way through this.
Yeah, seriously, let's keep it
Very
pushing.
interesting number
Yes.
to highlight. But yes.
Nice, yeah. So that takes us to number 70, which is an adventure called Unusual Pets.
Ooh,
And
good
a
one.
lot of us have seen this art as well. It's on a couple of the posters and some other things. So very, very good art. So it says, play this card only if your opponent has any creatures in play. The effect is before each of your turns, your opponent takes 4 damage. To solve, your opponent chooses 2 of his or her creatures in play and discards them. And the reward is your opponent may draw a card. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of like one of those like, all right, well, I guess I just get to draw a card. But doing 4 damage is a lot better than just 1, right? 1 or
Yeah,
2.
oh, yeah.
That's more of a heavy hitter where I'm just like, man, I'm gonna feel that because that's gonna sneak up and become 20, 30 damage before you know it. And
Oh,
then
totally.
yeah. So I would definitely rather so it says your opponent chooses 2 cards, two creatures and discard them. I'd probably rather do that for sure.
Yeah, same
Definitely.
here.
This was a great card when it was only the base set, but we've gotten better cards with other sets. But definitely, creature decks were really common at the base when only the base set was around. So
Yeah.
cool card.
Yeah,
And now we're going to our next card which is Vanishing Glass. It's Transfiguration spell, cost 9, so very costly. And then when you play this card, you can only play this card if your opponent has any lessons in play. What? Okay, that makes sense. They should have lessons. And then you choose one of those lessons and discard it. Then you can search your deck for a creature card, show it to your opponent, and put it into your hand. Sadness. Like, why doesn't this card put the creature into play? I don't know.
For
It
the
cost
cost,
9.
yeah.
It would have been flavorful. It was a miss, and I'm upset with whoever designed this card, but you tried.
No, you're right. It should go directly into play, especially
Also,
at that cost.
yeah, exactly. And also, like, the faces here are very absurd. I don't understand how they match the bodies that we saw.
Nope.
But yeah, that's what we have.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
Vanishing
love
Glass.
this one either.
Well, let's see what you guys think of this one. We got Winged Keys next. I like the artwork, although Harry looks a little
art.
goofy. But
He's totally
this is
Surfer Boy.
yeah. It's an item that reads, once during each of your turns, you may choose one of your opponent's creatures in play. Prevent all damage done to you by that creature until the end of your opponent's turn. Very helpful for, yes, Fluffy, Whomping Willow, dragons, to just single out the creature that is going to do the most damage to you.
Yeah. Exactly.
And really popular art too in some merch, if I'm not mistaken. I remember seeing this in some merch. I remember what. And just the idea of having this flock of magical keys protect you from a creature, the flavor is amazing. It's a little costly. I wouldn't necessarily use it.
Oh yeah, I failed to mention it costs 10 and it's Transfiguration. Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't use it either.
Yeah. So
okay, so that brings us to Accio, which is a spell and it costs 2 charms. And it reads, put up to 2 lesson cards from your discard pile into your hand. So that's definitely a good card. Because it's 2, I wouldn't expect it to go from your discard into play, but that would have been awesome, of course. But just to have 2 lesson cards from your discard pile into your hand is also, especially, it's cheap to do that. So it's assuming that you obviously need those lessons, right? So you're not going to have many to begin with.
Totally. Yeah, good card to pull early on for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, this was a popular card with Hermione when the base set was around only as well.
Oh, yeah.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And now for another spell, we go to Aviforce, which costs 2. It's Transfiguration spell, and it discards one of your opponent's care for magical creature lessons. So yeah, you're transforming a book into a bird. That's sort of the flavor. And really cool art, though. I always like the art of this card.
Me too.
Very simple, right? If your opponent has care for magical creatures, you can set them back. You're trading an action for an action. So depends on what you're trying to do with your life there. But
right.
Yeah.
Yes. No, for
Good
sure.
for control deck.
Yeah, exactly. Definitely a control card with removing any kind of lesson. So that's good. I like that.
Yep.
Wait.
Go ahead.
It has to be one of the care for magical creature lessons, though.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, for control decks in general, people usually like to remove any lessons.
Oh,
So, I
definitely.
mean,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
so just removing lessons in general is good.
Definitely. Next, we're looking at Bobilius. I hope I'm saying that correct. It's a spell for charms, low cost, only 2. Do 1 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice, then draw a card. I feel like the then draw a card is what makes this card stand out, because otherwise, I don't really see myself putting this in decks. But it's there are creatures that only have 1 health, so you could kill one of those creatures and draw a card. So again, it's not a card for me, but maybe some people will put it to use.
Yeah, it's a card that there's a better one. It's Toe Biter. It's in the same
Yes.
set, and it also draws a card. So I would prefer that. And also about Billy, whatever you say, it sounds like something Nicki Minaj would say. It's really interesting choice of words there.
Yeah, yeah. I would just definitely pass over this one and just say, "Oh, well, that's a nice looking gentleman," and then we would keep it pushing.
Yes, interesting rendition of Professor
Bernie
Flint there.
Sanders if he taught in Hogwarts.
There it is. Love it.
Nice.
So who's
Okay,
next?
so we've got Boa Constrictor, which is a creature. It costs 4 Care Magical Creature lessons. It is just one of those straight up that does 2 damage and it has 2 health. That's it. Put it into play. It's just doing damage and it just has a 2 health. So it's pretty good. I mean, there are better creatures for sure. Like, for example, Black Bat. So it also does 2 damage, but right when you put it into play, it does damage, like immediately. So so that might be maybe a better one if you're just looking at 2 damage to do. So
Totally.
Yes, vanilla creature, but still cool. At the start of the series, you have the snake behind the glass, but then you also have the Boil Cure falling after. This is a potions card, cost 1. It's a spell healing again, just making me angry, and it puts 4 non-healing cards from your discard pile into the bottom of your deck. And all I have to say is, sure.
Yeah, it's actually interesting because the Portuguese translation of this card reads, put up to 4 non-healing cards from your discard pile on the bottom of your deck in any order, then draw a card. So that would almost be a little bit better, especially because it just costs 1. You put, 4. Now, of course, you're not going to shuffle it, right? So you're not going to maybe get one of those because it's at the bottom of your deck. But to be able to draw a card would almost be worth that. But of course, that's just a mistranslation. So this is what we've got. And yeah.
And also, Pumphrey's Pick Me Up costs 3, right? It puts 3 non-healing cards and draws you a card. So it would be kind of silly to then put this if you had to do all that just for 1. But
I was going to say, it reminds me of like an upgraded Pumphrey's Pick Me Up. Interesting. Oh, the Portuguese version. Well, that brings us to our next wand. It is Borrowed Wand. If you play this card and already have wand in play, you have to discard the old one. We are familiar with that mechanic, but this provides just 2 charms lesson. Good low cost 3 lesson wand to get in play early on.
Yep.
Very popular card. It's a AC acceleration, especially when it was only the base set. And Borrow Wand just means stolen one. So it's it's a good card.
Yes, for sure. So that brings us to Cauldron to Sieve, which is a spell. It costs 2 Transfiguration, another one of those control type cards, which says choose one of your opponent's potions, lessons in play, and discard it. So just a way to kind of set them back. Pretty cut and dry.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's Avi Force, but for potions, basically.
Exactly.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
And then you have Curious Raven, costs 2 Care for Magical Creatures. It is a vanilla Raven, does 1 damage. It has health of 1, and for whatever reason, it has Frodo's Ring, and that's about it. There's nothing.
I see that.
There's nothing else.
Very
of this
strange.
card.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Very low cost creature. Then we're looking at another potion spell. It's Dung Bomb. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to you by your opponent's adventures and creatures. Now, that's a very important, valuable potions card. It only costs 2 potions power as well. So early on, you can start preventing some serious damage.
Yes, for sure. That's definitely a really good one. It's really inexpensive, like you said, Doug. So early on, hopefully you pull that. And if you got a person, one of your opponents has creatures and adventures, which that combination deck is definitely popular. That's a good way to kind of miss a few hits. So
totally.
Okay, is that you, Emilio?
Or I think this is you, Mona.
Is it me? Okay, so Epoximize is a spell, and it costs 2 Transfiguration, which is another. Just we're kind of going down with those controls. So choose one of your opponent's charms lessons in play and discard it. So I think in this set we've got one of each, right? So choose one of your opponent's specific lesson and discard it. And so
Yes.
this happens to be the one for charms. So another
Yeah.
really good if you're trying to build a control deck.
Totally.
In Transfiguration, of course.
Yeah.
So then we have a rampant potion that makes you burp. It costs 3, and apparently burping does you 1 damage to a creature or your opponent. This is
Exactly.
just a bizarre card, and
It-
also it just looks like a 50s commercial for some weird soda pop. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like this one's in contention for one of the worst cards of the base set because, like, I just don't see people utilizing this. It just feels like there's plenty of other cards that could do more damage or be
Yeah.
better utilized.
Exactly.
Next, we're looking at Fluffy Falls Asleep. Gotta love the art on this one. So cute.
Mhm.
Right
So
on the
fluffy.
trapdoor.
Yeah.
It only costs 3 Care of Magical Creatures power, but it says choose a creature in play and return it to its owner's hand. So you could use that as a way to heal your own creature or a way to just get one of your opponent's creatures off the board.
Yes, exactly.
Or discard it
Mm-hmm.
if you like return it and then use Draco or something like that. Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yep. True story. So that takes us to Forest Troll, which is a creature. It costs 2 Care Magical Creatures lessons. To play this card, discard one of your creature lessons from play. And this troll offers 2 damage each turn and 3 health. I'm probably at this point where I would choose a different creature. Again, like Black Bat, for example, it doesn't cost. You don't have to discard anything in order to put Black Bat into play, but it does immediate damage. So just for me personally, I wouldn't use that. But I love the art, right? And it's a pretty decent card.
Definitely. Love that art.
And it comes with a variant that's foil.
I saw
Mhm.
that. Yeah, I would love
That's
to
right.
own one of those one day.
And then we go to Forgetfulness Potion. Cost 7 potion, again a spell to make me angry. And to play this card, you discard 1 potions lesson from play. And during your opponent's next turn, he or she can't play cards.
Wow.
Yep.
So this is a
Interesting.
really interesting one for sure. I think you can lock down your opponent, later on in the game for sure. But you have to have a game plan because otherwise you're just sort of like stalling.
Yeah, and
Exactly. Yeah.
to discard a potions lesson, I feel like that'd be better utilized for healing rather than that. But yeah, again, it all depends on the situation you're in. The next one is another potion. It costs 5. It's called Foul Brew. It's a spell to piss off Emilio. Do 2 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice. So it's like a rampant, but just 2 this time.
Yeah, and Draco is on something there. That's a very weird expression.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. He's definitely got some foul play in mind for sure.
I bet that smells really bad. Okay.
Yes, for sure. That takes us to our next creature, which is Giant Tarantula. It costs 1 Care Magical Creatures lesson. To play this card, discard one of your lessons in play. Your only lesson, discard it. And that is to do 2 damage, and it has 1 health. So, I mean, this is definitely sort of like a cheap creature that you can put into play, especially, I mean, if you have it kind of later on or even at the very beginning, you can just start doing damage. But because you have to get rid of one, this isn't something that I would have in my deck. It just doesn't seem worth it, I guess, for the 2 is kind of what I keep going to.
Right. What's interesting about this though is now that we have the revival cards, there's a lot of people making like spider oriented decks. So yeah, this would play into that for sure.
For sure.
Interesting. And then we have Hagrid and the Stranger.
Mhm.
It's a spell that costs 4 Care for Magical Creatures. Hagrid has gotten an upgrade in the art here. He looks actually a little handsome, like daddy-like. And then this spell puts a creature from your discard pile into your hand. So this is great for creature decks for sure. I run this if I have creatures, and you have Quirrell there just being creepy, trying to get information about Fluffy, basically.
Yes, for sure. I would definitely run this in my creature deck that had those healing plants that I mentioned earlier, like Umbrella Flowers and Leaping Toadstools, because if you're taking that hit, and your plants are taking those hits, and that'll definitely get them in the discard pile quick, and then you can hopefully pull them back out and kind of help you.
Totally. Next, we're looking at Homework. I think this is one of my wife's favorite cards. Yes, it only costs 2 Transfiguration Power, and it says, put up the 2 lesson cards from your hand into play. It's basically Hermione the card.
Yes, yep.
Yeah, very cool.
Okay, so that takes us to Hospital Wing. It costs 4 potions. It is a spell healing. Again, another one to piss off Emilio. We apologize. To play this card, discard one of your potion lessons from play. Shuffle up to 8 non-healing cards from your discard pile into your deck. So just another helpful healing one. You kind of have to get rid of something to get something, sort of logic, I guess. If that's your thing, then go for it. 8 is not too bad if it costs 4. So
Yeah.
Totally.
And then we're gonna move to illegible. And then illegible is 5 cost charm spell. It lets you look at your opponent's hand and you choose one of the cards and discard it. So this is Malfoy in a card.
yes,
And
exactly.
also, this is a card that's worth 3,000. Just joking. There's someone that put this card, a promo
Yes.
card of this for $3,000.
Oh,
Whoever you are, please consider your life choices.
we
Yes,
are
that was
laughing at you.
unbelievably
all day.
goofy. Because didn't one just sell the other day for like $20 or something?
It's
I have no idea.
it's a cheap card, but yeah. Also, it's good if you have, if you don't use Draco Malfoy, discarding a key card from your opponent's hand is always good. So
Totally.
definitely something I consider depending on your control strategy. And Scabbers is there looking almost human. I don't know why, but
And Ron is not
Yeah.
human at all. It's like,
Exactly.
hey, Ron, what's going on there, man?
Ron
point.
looks like Alejandro music video from Lady Gaga, has a bob wig and
Yeah.
a pizza face. So yeah,
Yes.
if you're
Wow.
into that, there's the art for you.
Yeah.
What a comparison. Next, we're looking at Incarcifores. This is Transfiguration, costs 6, and it says choose one of your opponent's creatures in play and discard it. So you control which creature you're discarding of your opponents. So very powerful for anti-creature decks.
Yes, for sure. I definitely love that card. The next one is a spell card. It costs 5 Transfiguration. It's called Lost Notes.
Yeah.
Choose one of your opponent's items or lessons in play and discard it. I personally really like this card. I hate when it's used against me,
Yeah.
especially just because you're totally setting somebody back. So you're most likely gonna have them discard a lesson. At least that's kind of what I've seen whenever people play Lost Notes or when I play Lost Notes. But it's really, really good card.
I like the option though of the item. You could get rid of one of their
Yes,
wands,
definitely.
a broom. Yeah, very
For sure.
debilitating card for sure.
And now we have a charm spell that costs 2, magical mischief, and you do 3 damage to your opponent. And you have Harry, who had a bag that exploded on him. There's fireballs everywhere. I don't know what's going on. Probably magic mushrooms. But that's all I can say about
it
this.
sure looks
That's
like
the
it.
only explanation.
Trippy. Then we're looking at Noxious Poison. It is costs 3 potions power, and it says to play this card, discard one of your potion lessons from play. Very common recurring themes in potion cards. Do 5 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice. Again, the option is everything I need.
For sure. Yep, definitely. Okay, then that takes us to Out of the Woods, which is a spell for charms. It costs 5 charms lessons. It says, look at your opponent's hand, discard all creature cards from it. So that's definitely a really good card, especially if you sometimes you can realize like at the very beginning, depending on who your opponent's starting character is, whether they might be utilizing some creatures or not, or of course, if you just find out from their lessons or whatever. So this
Right.
might help out, just to kind of get rid of some that would have done damage to you.
Totally. Love that card.
And then we have Pet Rat, which basically costs 1, discard one of your lessons, and it hits for 1, but it has the health of 4. And oddly enough, it's a picture of Scabbers.
I was gonna say it looks just like Scabbers. That's goofy.
Yeah.
And we
It
have
has the
a Scabbers
stars,
skin.
yeah,
Yeah.
the stars of Scabbers. So really weird.
Strange.
It's a cat rat. with that
Yes.
face.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our next card, another Cauldron. It's Pewter Cauldron this time, costs 5 potions power and provides 3. And it says to play this card, discard one of your potion lessons for play. So to discard 1 and provide 3, you're at a net gain of 2. Pretty handy for potions decks.
Yeah, definitely, definitely handy for sure. Okay, so that takes us to Potion's Mistake, which is a spell. It costs 6 Potions Lessons. To play this card, discard 3 of your Potion Lessons from play. Choose one of your opponent's creatures or items in play and discard it. So you're basically getting rid of 3 of your lessons to discard a card. When if it's an item, then you could definitely just use Lost Notes instead.
Yeah,
You
pretty
know, but
rough. It's tough to justify this card a bit.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
That was card number 100. We're almost through this, guys. Thank you
Yes.
for powering through with us. This one's Emilio's. This is a good
Yes,
card.
and we have the Remember All. Pretty cool
Yes.
art. It's like a little pink orb, so someone's forgetting something. It costs 8, and during your turn, you can use an action to play a lesson from your discard pile into play. I actually like that effect a lot. It's just a little costly of a card,
Yeah.
sadly, but a really cool card. In Magic, you have Crucible of Worlds, which another cards, but it's a good mechanic. I like to play things from my discard pile, so I like
Totally.
this card. Just a little costly, as I said.
Another card that's available as a promo as well.
Yes.
Yep.
Very cool. And then next we have restricted section, low cost transfiguration, only costs 2 power. Choose one of your opponent's transfiguration lessons and play and discard it. So again, with the control decks, this one's specifically targeting transfiguration lessons.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
And that's a happy slug there.
Ooh,
Yes,
Happy slug.
it is. Okay, so that takes us to Scottish Stag. And so that is a creature. It costs 4 Carrot Magical creature lessons. The damage is only 1 and the health is 5. So kind of a weak-ish creature in my opinion, but it is a Scottish Stag. So
Yeah.
there you go.
5 health, not too easy to kill either.
Right.
Definitely. And then we have a question from Snape. It costs 3. It's a spell. It does 4 damage to your opponent, but your opponent can prevent it if they know something about potions by discarding a potions lesson from their hand. Huh. So yeah, it's a card. It does damage.
It's a gamble, yeah.
I wouldn't. I also don't like this card. It's like whatever. You can do 4
Definitely.
damage though for 3, but yeah.
Another
Yeah.
promo. I'm gonna shout them out when I remember them.
Yes, yes, go.
And we got next
Sure.
Squiggle Quill, Transfiguration, low cost, only 2, and choose one of your opponent's items in play and discard it. So yeah, again, this is just targeting items specifically. Not sure I would play this card.
For sure. This next card I would play, and I do play often. This is Steel Claw.
Oh
It
yeah,
is a really good
Yeah.
spell, Transfiguration. It costs 4 only. And I say only because of what it can do to your opponent. So it reads, all of your creatures do damage to your opponent. So this is awesome. So for me personally, and I think a lot of people are kind of up this alley, whenever you have a creature deck, you usually add some Transfiguration just because they oftentimes go hand in hand, the spells from those. So this is an example of one of them. So you've got, let's say, 4 or 5 different creatures in play, and then you have Steel Claw, or if you got 2 Steel Claw. I mean, I've had myself or my opponent play that against me, where they've had 2 Steel Claw, and you've got an upwards of 20 damage that can be done. So it is absolutely brutal, but a really, really good card. Very good card.
yeah, love it, absolutely.
Yeah, a finisher for sure.
Mhm.
Very used card in the past and still in the present. So, and then I have a vanilla dog. It's looking mad. It costs 3 care for magical creatures. It does 1 damage per turn. So its bark is bigger than its bite, and its health is 3. And that's it.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's interesting choice that they even included this Surly Hound versus Fang and all these other creatures, but it is what it is. I don't really play this one myself too often.
Me either.
But the
But-
next card is pretty good.
Oh yeah, you mentioned it earlier, Toe Biter. This one I do play in many Charms decks. It's only costs 3 Charms power, and it says do 2 damage to your opponent. You may also choose a creature and do 2 damage to it. So it's not even the or condition. This is you are doing damage to your opponent and a creature of your choice. I absolutely love this card. Even if the
Yeah.
damage is minimal, that is great.
And it's cheap. It's
It
it
was
doesn't cost a lot.
It was a
Yeah.
very famous, very used card with a base set when it was only a base set. But we've had other cards that are also a little better, but still a very good card. Yeah.
Agreed.
Awesome.
Okay, that takes us to Vermilius, which is a spell charms. It costs 4. Do 3 damage to your opponent or to a creature of your choice. So you might choose Toebiter instead of that. But either way, it is a good card. I've had a few of these in my deck. So
Same here.
yeah.
Yeah. So cool art too. Very once again with the really weird choices of color for the smokes. I like it. It's just really interesting that they do that.
Right.
And then I get another vanilla card. It's like just the cards hate. It's a wolf. It's angry. It's 6. Costs 6 charismatic creatures. It has 3 damage. It has a health of 3, and that's the end of the story.
Yeah, the picture is more vicious.
Yeah.
The vicious wolf looks more vicious in the picture than it actually would in play.
Right. It's
Definitely.
more useful in a pack if you are stacking the vicious wolves.
There you
That
go.
would be handier. And that brings us to Wingardium Leviosa, the classic spell we're
Leviosa.
all familiar with. Leviosa. Thank you. That's the thing. The artwork for this one's really interesting. That troll looks completely different. He's all hairy and stuff.
Yeah.
But the spell reads, and it only costs 1 charms. During your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to you by your opponent's creatures. So yeah, very cool, very flavorful,
Yeah,
good card, very low cost.
definitely.
Yes, for sure. And this takes us to 112, which
Woo!
is Wizard Crackers. It costs 1 charms. It is a spell. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a lesson card, put it into play. If it isn't, put the card into your hand. So this could definitely be very, very helpful. It only costs 1, so hopefully you got that lesson, you put it into play. Otherwise, then it kind of essentially allows you to draw a card, right? So
Yeah.
Very useful early on card. I love this card. I feel like it's underutilized in many of my decks, so I feel like I'll have to sprinkle that in a few more.
Yeah. Well, we're done.
Yeah, I was gonna
Man,
say.
that's
So
it.
that's the
Whoa!
last 4 cards are just lesson cards, which we got Care of Magical Creatures, Transfiguration, Potions, and Charms. So we did the full 116. I knew it was
That
gonna take a while, but
was intense.
it was. Well, and that's the nice thing about the future sets is it'll only be 80, but that and then except once we get to Chamber of Secrets, that's going to be maybe a part 1 and a part 2 because
For sure,
that'll
yeah.
be pretty intense. But no,
Yeah.
thank you guys for sticking around and tuning into this long, in-depth discussion about the base set. Let's maybe wrap this episode up and do some plugs. Tell our listeners where they can find us on the internet and what we have in store for next week or next month.
Okay, so you can all right, so you can find me, Mona, at on Instagram at Harry Potter Morsi, where you'll see bits and pieces of my collection as I dig some stuff out and I showcase them on there, as well as on YouTube. Into the Flu is the name of my channel, where I go over a lot of old school merchandise, some of the vintage Harry Potter items, as well as Harry Potter TCG cards. I do box openings, booster pack openings, deck buildings, how to play the game, etc. So if you're a fan of Harry Potter TCG or anything vintage Harry Potter, then you definitely want to check that out for sure.
Definitely head over there and give that a sub. How about you, Emilio?
Yeah. I'm fainting. I'm so hungry right now, but you can find me, Emilio Soto, in Nostalgia Collectible Investments YouTube channel, and I talk about Harry Potter, Neopets, Wyvern CCG, Maple Story, Middle Earth CCG, and sometimes about Magic and Flesh and Blood, all the games that I can think of. I've played all of them, so if you want to listen to some flavorful gameplay or art detail, or just know the market movements of the sealed product and prices as they shift, I do both of those to my channel. So check it out and maybe subscribe.
Definitely. And listener, if you want to see my wife and I play some of the card game, we're findable at twitch.tv/ABT Silence every Tuesday at around 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We play for an hour or two, try a couple decks here and there. And ABT Silence stands for Almost Better Than Silence. It's a video game podcast I host with my friends. Definitely go check that out if you like video games. I think you'd be interested. We have a lot of cool interviews that you should check out. And then if you want to get in touch with us, feel free to send us an email at rennervatepodcast@gmail.com. We'd love to read any of your feedback or ideas or thoughts on things we've discussed, any of your favorite cards. That's something we do intend on doing in the future, is a deep dive on our favorite cards from the various sets, but that'll be for a future episode. And yeah, next month we'll be diving into the Quidditch Cup set, if I'm not mistaken. I think
Yes.
that's
That's
the next
right.
one.
Yep.
Yes. So stay excited and tell a friend, and yeah, let us know some of your favorite cards. We look forward to hearing from you, and we'll be back next time. That's one thing I wanted to say maybe real quick before we sign off. Maybe we try a new sign off instead of it's time to disappear like Dobby. Maybe we should all just say mischief managed at the same time or something to that effect. I don't really know, but that was an idea. But let's sign off for this week. Thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next time. Mischief managed.
Mischief managed.
I'm gonna faint. I need
Yeah, Emilio is actually down in the kitchens right now, so he's gone.
Dobby's serving food. All right,
Yeah,
there we go.
Dobby's serving food. Thanks,
Take
guys.
Yes.
care, everyone.